Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It's myself, George, and today we bring you a very much anticipated spoiler discussion. This is the first spoiler discussion, I guess you could say, of a blockbuster for this year. This is, of course, The Batman, directed by Matt Reeve, starring Rob Pattinson as Bruce Wayne / Batman. And joining me tonight, we have return channel Dave and Ayman once more. Delighted to get you both on tonight, and this is going to be a fun one. So, just in case you didn't get the message at the start, people at home, this is a spoiler discussion. There's nothing off the grid. The film has been out pretty much everywhere in the world. I think China gets in a couple of weeks' time, and we're just going to go over a lot of characters, a lot of story ideas, scenes, all that kind of stuff. And maybe there'll be another few quick fire questions to put you both on the spot with. Who knows? But before we do that, I'm going to ask everybody at home, please do comment your thoughts on the Batman, anything you liked about the film, anything you disliked about the film, what you think might be in the sequels, all that kind of stuff. Please do comment along with us tonight. We'll bring them up on the screen as we always do, and do hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more spoiler discussions coming the way this year, not just with DC films. This isn't even the only Batman film of this year. There's going to obviously be Flash starring many Batmen, which will obviously get a video and a lot of others. So please do hit the subscribe button. And if you're new to the channel, the best way to find out about our videos when we're going to do stuff is getting us on social media. That is Twitter at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. And as always, I'm not going to put on the spot of a question. I'm actually just going to ask both of you. I'll start with you, Dave. Where was your hype heading into this film? Because we were all at the IMAX. Ayman, I was with you. Dave, you were at the IMAX on the Thursday previous, weren't you? Was it 7 o'clock at night? Walking into the cinema, how hyped were you? Where were you at mentally with that?
I was pretty hyped up for this one. It's been a long wait. I think the gestation period of how it was put off for so long kind of built it up to actually where when it was being first made, and like you were saying, some of the stills that came in, I wasn't overly fussed about it. Like, oh, okay, it's a new Batman film and all the saga behind the scenes of what went on. So I wasn't that hyped, but the delay of it and kind of the more we saw going in, I got really, really hyped up towards the actual going to see the IMAX viewing, like getting my tickets as soon as they came released. And I was like, I had to get those seats. And yeah, so it was, I got really hyped towards the actual screening. And it was nice to be in a packed IMAX theater again, like literally completely sold out. It was just a really good atmosphere as well when you arrived in the cinema. So it was really nice to be back in that sort of, I haven't been, I mean, I went to see No Way Home. That was kind of busy as well, but not to that point where it was just literally there wasn't a spare seat in the house. So yeah, it was really, really good atmosphere. And I was really hyped by the time the big Batman logo flashed on the screen.
Yeah, so I wasn't really interested when it was announced. But yeah, I mean, just to build on what Dave was saying, the more the delay sort of like amplified the hype for it, really. I mean, when it was announced and it was that Robert Pattinson was going to be Batman or Bruce Wayne, it was like, that's a bit weird. I mean, but after it was really good. Like, the hype was, when we got to the cinema, I was really hyped, really looking forward to it. And it did, not to jump the gun, but it did pay off in all that hype, to be fair.
Yeah, and then we've got Hassan as well. We saw an IMAX 2 in Uxbridge. I mean, we were, again, IMAX showings. That we'll get into some of the sound and some of the things later on. But I think to say, I mean, obviously, I was very lucky. I was at that press screening on the, oh God, what day was it? The Thursday, like a week before we had our tickets booked anyway, when that midnight ticket bar went up. This is what I found really interesting. So when I booked our tickets, there was like hardly any gone. And we were like dibs on the best seats. And then there was nothing for like a week or two. And then it was almost like when I checked about 10 days ago, I think that's when it started kicking in for people. When the press tour kicked off, I think Warner Brothers really amped up the marketing. And it was, I'd say like 95% full. Like there was maybe the odd seat at the front left and right that no one wants to sit in. But the fact that these were previews before a midnight is quite saying in truth. And just the I don't want to say atmosphere, because that was like a Marvel film. This wasn't a Marvel film thing. Everyone was intensely on it. There was no clapping, no cheering. Obviously, you know, I can have laughter or people squirming at certain moments. That's normal. But there was an atmosphere without there being absolutely. You could just tell people were excited to be in there. And a kind of lot of that I'm curious about. I'm actually going to I'm going to talk about, obviously, I know you've mentioned a hype better for it, but before this came out, Dave, you have done a marathon like no one else I've seen. You didn't. I mean, you've done 11 films. I'm just going to say that. But obviously, there was the variation of the final film in that rewatch. I want to call you out on. But just tell the people what on earth have you been watching the last few weeks?
So the 9 days before the movie, I thought, you know what, I'll get a bit of Batman fix before I go in, because it's been a while since I actually watched a Batman movie. So I thought, you know what, I'll get caught up a little bit. So I'll go back and I'll watch Batman 66, the movie, and that was terrible. And then I watched, all right, we'll go to the Legacy one. So I watched all 4 Legacy movies. And then I was like, well, maybe that'll take us nicely towards the end. I thought, well, no, we've got a few more days. So I thought, right, Nolan trilogy next. So I did all of that, hoping by the time I got like time to watch those movies, that I'd be literally time to go in the cinema. But no, I had spare days. So I was like, well, I guess that means I've taken another couple of movies. So Batman versus Superman was then watched. And then Justice League, or the Justice League version anyway, I watched that one because I wasn't going to myself through 4 hours of the Snyder Cut again for that. It just didn't seem worth it. And then finished with the Lego Batman movie just to really round out my experience with all the Batman I could take. And then the Batman.
And this is what I'm kind of curious about, like, going into it, having watched all them, was there certain images in your mind for the film, or was it still very much clean? Like, it's a really fascinating approach, because I don't know about you, and I'll ask you in a second, but I didn't watch anything bar Phantasm and Lego Batman, but that was like 3-4 weeks ago. So I wouldn't even say I've like prepped for this. I just went in cold, maybe. I don't know. I'm curious.
No, I get that as well. I think I still went in with a full expectation. I didn't put any of those previous movie expectations onto this film. I think seeing all those, like the 11 films I saw before this, I saw a lot more hints at those films throughout the Batman that were just sort of laid in to background, and the way they built the Gotham very much was the way it was built around aspects of different places we've been previously in Batman history. I just thought it was quite a jarring aesthetic for me at first, but it didn't hinder the film in any way. I wasn't like, oh, I've seen all these other Batman films and I want to just project that onto there. I knew I was going to see a completely fresh take on the Batman, and certainly this was a really, really fresh take on the Dark Knight.
Did you see any of them? I actually don't know if I asked you that last week.
So I rewatched The Dark Knight before, a couple of days before, and then I watched Dark Knight Rises. I think it was the Tuesday after work. I just thought it was on, so I thought I'd just give that a watch through just before we went to go see it on the Thursday. But I didn't intentionally go out my way to like watch any.
And this is what I find amazing. So I think I don't want to compare to No Way Home, but I guess the last 2 big comic book films, pre No Way Home, like everyone was on Spider-Man hype, and that's absolutely 100% right. Like I went through the Maguires, the Garfields. I know a lot of people are the same. I know Dave, you do all these Batman films. I saw a lot of people either watching all of them like yourself, or some doing the Dark Knight trilogy. A lot of people were talking about Phantasm, so it's been really interesting seeing how everyone's approached this. And I saw an amazing interview with Rob Pattinson where they asked him, what Batman films did you watch to be inspired? And he goes, I didn't want to watch a single one of them. And he goes, he didn't want to take anything many of acting. He didn't want to, have these images in mind. Obviously, he's seen them all. And he said, he actually did a great interview. He said, there's no such thing as a bad Batman film. And then he's even talking about Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, saying, at the end of the day, they are kids' films and people enjoy them, which I agree with. So that's the kind of approach with it. I think by the time November comes for Flashpoint, I'm going to have gone through the Keatons, because I said I would, because obviously he's in it. I'm going to do the Snyder trilogy. I've got behind me as a Christmas present last year to watch still. Very time consuming, but again, if it is going to be a kind of sequel, I don't know if the Snyder Cut is actually going to be. I don't want to get into the whole canon phrase because this is the DC fans we're talking about, but I don't know if Flashpoint is following on from the events of the Zack Snyder Cut or the Justice League Cut. I don't think they'll care. I don't think they'll explain that. I think they'll just kickstart a film and do their multiverse thing. But that film's going to have a lot of prep being watched before it. And maybe there'll be some other surprises down the line. Who knows? Really quick question by Hassan. Did you find the theme to have a hint of the Imperial March? We have a section for Michael Giacchino's score. So apologies for answering this now, but I have seen that question being asked a lot, actually. We'll bring that up with the soundtrack section, because that's going to be a really big one for me. What I really want to kickstart you guys about talking into this is, obviously we spoke about the hype heading into it. Before the core of this discussion is going to be on the characters, the events surrounding them, the character arcs, performances, all that stuff. We've really got to make a conversation about Matt Reeves. Really quick comment, 007. Even goes John Thomas on Friday. These guys were on our Bond Batman discussion, which was really good fun. A lot of parallels between where the Bond films are now and where the Batman films are with evolution of cinema, all that. So please do check that out. I'm glad they all saw it. I hope they liked it, which should be question number 2. But going back to Matt Reeves, I'm kind of curious. So I loved his Apes films, Planet of the Apes. Now, I've not seen much of his work before them, I'm going to say. I know he only did the second and third one, but when he was cast as originally, it was going to be, he was going to direct Ben Affleck's Batman. And Ben Affleck was still going to write it and star in it. It would just be Matt Reeves directing it. And that was exciting, because I love the Apes films. I think it was just before War came out as well, so it really increased the hype. And then it came out, and, Ben Affleck obviously is having issues, that it would just be him directing a young Ben Affleck's Batman, still in the DCEU. And then at that point in time, I think everyone started clocking on that he's probably not going to direct that, which is, if I'm going to be blunt, really pointless to do a prequel to a Batman character that I don't want to say not many people are fussed about, because I do like Ben Affleck, but not many people have gone out and seen the other few films. But then obviously it became, this is an outright reboot. This is a new Batman universe. I'm directing everything from scratch. It's going to be a new Batman. It's not an origin story. It's set in year 2. But they're calling it now the Batverse, or the Matt Reeves universe, however we want to call it. I honestly have to say, being really blunt, obviously maybe I'm biased because hype for this, I think what he has done with this film, and this is everything from like set design to aesthetics to the story to the tone, I hate using the term gets the character, because he does, but this is a 5-year production, and you can see someone's love of a certain character, of a universe, of the lore, of the history of the character. You can really see that on screen, and I can't say the same for many other, not even comic book characters, many of the modern blockbusters anymore. Obviously, we've been blessed. We had Spider-Man, which, it was what it was. It was amazing. This big event film, right? We had Dune, which was Denis Villeneuve directing this, book 30 years later that he used to read as a teenager. And I feel that with Matt Reeves, this is someone that's like maybe grown up with those comics from the 80s, or has just had this deep love for the character, and he's took his chance, and he has just delivered an absolute masterpiece amongst comic book films. How do you all think really initially on the point of his direction, his take on the character?
You can't doubt how much he has been in the lore of this, and I don't mean by that, I don't think he is a Batman movie person. He is very much seems to have got his lore from the comic book runs, from the graphic novels that have been around for Batman, because that was, if this was released as, you could imagine this movie as a graphic novel. Batman Year One, obviously, this takes so many influences from sort of that. There's different passes of different Batman comics that just take little bits, The Long Halloween, things like that, just take little snippets from. And I just think it worked so well that he's kind of built this world himself. And I think it was probably maybe the best thing that could have happened for him to get sole control of it, and Affleck to leave the project. I think it opened up for Matt Reeves to go, right, well, if that's the case, we're not going to go down this route. I've got a much better idea for what I want my Batman movie to be. And I think at some points, sometimes it doesn't feel like a Batman movie in certain senses, that this was a dark detective story. And I just thought he played it so well. I mean, I've only seen, from Matt Reeves' work, I've only seen the 2 Apes movies, and that's all I've seen of his work. So I don't know a lot outside of that. But again, I really enjoyed the Apes movies as well. I thought they were really well done. But he's certainly taken, for me, a massive leap up in the technical direction that he's done, for the way it looked, for the way it sounded. I mean, obviously, there's other people behind all of that, but the way he's obviously built the picture that he wanted to tell, and to go right through that, I just think he's done exceptional work. And yeah, you can tell his absolute love of this character.
Yeah, I'll have to agree. I mean, yeah, you can tell that he didn't. I mean, going back to Christopher Nolan trilogy, that's very sort of tonally different than this new Batman film. You can tell, like, with the architecture and the sort of themes running through it, you can tell that he's gotten a lot from sort of the comic books, and especially from the animated series as well. Or the architecture that he uses in that for the buildings and stuff like that. You can really see that he's used the animated series for that as well.
And as well, I think I'm glad you mentioned that, 'cause the comic run, I've saw something on Twitter, and obviously, it's Twitter, it's probably not true, They believe that Matt Reeves' screenwriter at university or college in America was a comic book writer in the 80s, which, if that is true, big if, again, you don't believe everything you read on the internet, that just answers a lot of questions because, as you said, Ayman, the Gotham design, the city, it feels like, I hate the term leaps from a page into the live action, but it feels like that 80s run that, we spend so much time reading when we're younger, you're getting to comics. Everyone always says, what Batman comics do you read if you've never read a comic? And they always say, Year One, The Dark Knight Returns, Killing Joke. You get the same like 4 or 5 on loop. And we'll talk about Hush actually later on. But with what he's done with this world, and this is what I found amazing, talking about Gotham itself, the city, this is, a criticism of the Nolan films to some, which I don't fully agree with, is that because it's so real, they shoot in real cities. We shoot in Chicago, we shoot in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, I can't remember which one, some scenes in London, and some people would say it's too real. And I do understand that criticism. But inherently, it always feels like it's modern day big cities, post 9/11 filmmaking, all that kind of stuff. With this, the genius is that the technology has reached a point, and maybe production design has reached a point. You can take real life landmarks, real life buildings, skyscrapers, whatever, chuck them all on the same city in After Effects. There is your new Gotham City. It is an amalgamation of everything we've seen before. And I think it's simple yet genius that, when we get the jump off the tower, that's the Liverpool, is it the Liver building or whatever it's called? And you got the City Hall and loads of Liverpoolians, whatever, were saying, oh, look, we were there at filming. And then you've got the Chicago Tribune building there at the forefront as well. So it still feels like you've got some of these real life elements, which isn't a bad thing at all. But it's amazing just to see it all come together because it looks new, it looks different. It doesn't look like we've got this seal from the other stuff. And I feel that that's Matt Reeves' approach. Of course, when you mentioned it, the whole, he hasn't took stuff from the other films. He's gone and done his own thing. And I think even, before he even gets characters, just the city design. I know it's always raining a lot. It just feels like something new that we've never really been able to see on screen. If anyone else sort of agrees with that.
The only time I found it jarring was the first shot when he goes into what was like their Times Square sort of setting. And there was very much a New York aesthetic with then what looked like a Nelson's column right in the middle of it. And then that was the only time I kind of clashed with it at the start. I was like, it's a bit, I can see too much from different places that you've now tried to put in this one shot. But it was the only time they kind of did that. It was the only time they kind of centered on that one central hub. And then they kind of didn't go away. They stayed obviously in the outskirts of the city and things like that. And we saw a lot of obviously shots from above the city later on in the movie. So you didn't kind of get that one focus. It was the only shot that I kind of got like, the aesthetic didn't work for me on that. But other than that, I thought it was a really, really nice take on the building their own Gotham.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, I wasn't looking out for certain landmarks from anywhere really because I didn't know that they were. I mean, I knew that they shot some scenes in Liverpool, but apart from that, I wasn't really aware. But I mean, thinking back to it, you can notice they've taken sort of landmarks, and the skyline overall is very. You can tell that it's an amalgamation of different cities that they shot in.
And I think as well, what's amazing, they're using the Mando tech. I know that Greg Fraser is the cinematographer for this. I know he worked on chapter 2 and 7, maybe. He did some Mandalorian stuff, but that tech that we see, I know ILM got credits with obviously Skywalker branch and all that in this film as well, but knowing that technology that kicks out on a TV show like 2-3 years ago is now being used in a blockbuster film, and it's being used for the function of, we're not just filming here for the sake of filming here, we're combining these real life things that we cannot do in camera. We're going to merge them together. And it was probably all the stuff that is on the Gotham, where the bat signal is. It's in like a sort of rundown skyscraper, isn't it? I love that all of that was where they use that Mando tech, and maybe other scenes we'll see down the line. But the behind the scenes, this one's going to be absolutely amazing to watch because so much of it did look practical. I've just got a couple of comments from people I'm going to bring up. Sam says he loved the Julia character from the original Detective Comics Batman, amongst the favorites of his Batman films. Tay374 says the Batman's really good. Benjamin has also put, I prefer the overall structure of this over No Way Home. I'd agree with you. Two completely different films, I'm going to say. I'm not going to go on a rant, but I've seen a lot of people, not even critics, normal people on the internet, which shouldn't really annoy me, being upset that this film isn't fun enough. I think there was like some Twitch video going viral of some guy like just saying it's not fun like Marvel. Don't want to really get into that kind of thing, but maybe a discussion down the line is blockbuster cinema moving a certain direction following Marvel. I don't know, but I don't want to go into a Batman film. And listen, I like Batman and Robin. I like Batman Forever, but the 25-year-old me wouldn't want to see one of those be ever made again, as much as I love them. And I think there's a place for them. There's a reason why I enjoyed it as a kid. Maybe that makes me a hypocrite. I don't know. But the tone of this, I thought, was absolutely perfect. You know, going to some of them areas of the big thing they spoke about was film noir. And I feel that film noir is a term that was obviously like, during like the mid-noughties after Sin City, everyone was doing like black and white films. You know, the old classic detective stuff, framing on the windows, all that kind of stuff. And then it obviously dropped off the cliff. But then with this, what I loved, especially, you know, the Bruce Wayne reading the diary aloud at the start and end of the film, the narration, it felt like film noir, not because out of choice, but because this film has been designed in a way that suits that. Now, Matt Reeves spoke at the first DC fandom, and he basically said, you know, he took on all these character ideas, and he said he's the world's greatest detective, but we've never really seen him be a detective. And the whole core of his film was that we're going to see Batman running a case, which you think is a simple premise. You think every film would be that. And technically they are to a point, but this was, Dear Diary, here is my new case. Dear Diary, the case is now complete at the end. But the moment you start listening to Pattinson's dialogue mixed with the incredible editing on that montage at the start of the Chiquina score as well, the whole Halloween party stuff, that I was watching that. Every time I've seen this, I've had goosebumps. I've seen it 3 times at the time of this video going up. And I get proper goosebumps when that pumpkin head looks up at the light. And I just feel like he just gets the film. Like, they know exactly what this Batman's going to be. And it feels like, you know, when you read a comic, right, you get the yellow boxes, and it basically is the internal dialogue of the character. It feels like we're getting that on screen from Batman. And just as someone that, like, put a lot of time into reading them over the years, I thought it was just amazing. That 4-minute sequence at the start, I think, sets up the film perfectly from what not only is this film going to be about, what this new take on Batman's going to be.
I think it's always going to go in a direction for Batman that you don't maybe get with other characters. I think we'll probably get very similar feels of Moon Knight that's going to start on Disney Plus for the Marvel side of it. I think you're going to get that darker tone. Certainly, they've said that it's going to be a much darker sort of take on a character. But I think Batman sort of builds himself in that. Now, I adore, and I grew up on the Batman 66, so I love a Dutch angled room when the bad guys come in, and I love pows and kapows and slams and all of that. And I love the campy nature. I think it's fantastic. I could go back and sit and watch those over and over again. Maybe not the movie again, because that is awful, apart from the bomb section. But other than that, it's terrible. But I just think for this day and age, and the fact it was over here, I know it was a PG-13 in the States, but we got a 15 rating. And I think it's a long time since we've had like a 15 rated movie, certainly of this ilk, that's going to be sort of a, you would have thought they would have tried to get down to a 12 age just to try and get more bums on seats. I don't think it's for language. It can only be for violence, really, because there's not really any language issues through the movie. There's no real cursing I could recall, really. I don't think there was the odd son of a bitch here and there, but I don't think there's a lot of actual, like what you would class as bad language. But I think the darker tone certainly suits the character, especially this version of him where he's in. I love that I went with year 2, so he's in there, and I love that he's writing the diaries of exactly what he's done in the days, and that he's just learning about himself, like a full on. He wants to know exactly what he's done, exactly what route he's going to make himself this character he's trying to be, or this Dark Knight he's trying to be. And I thought it was wonderfully done. But yeah, I think a darker tone is always going to come with Batman, no matter where he is. Certainly down in the future, that's the way they're going to build him. Even with the Snyderverse, he was certainly the darkest of those characters, and it just seems to be the setting now for Batman, and it goes very much along with the comics that this is inspired by.
Yeah, I'm of the same thought. Like, Batman inherently is a dark character. Like, all the comic book panels, they always shows Gotham in a sort of, even if it's during the day, it's sort of dreary, it's raining, it's sort of grey. And I think that came through really well, and it plays really well with Batman. I mean, yeah, compared to like something like Spider-Man, who's joking and stuff, you wouldn't want a Batman film that's like with Batman like cracking jokes every 2 seconds, because he's not that type of character. He's more serious, down to earth, sort of dark, and that's because of his past and that sort of like storyline and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we keep speaking about Batman. Let's get into it. Let's talk about Rob Pattinson, who, I kind of want to. I feel like but obviously, Ayman, you mentioned his casting earlier. This is what's been amazing. So we've had like 6 or 7 Batman now. So you had Michael Keaton, who's famously they used to write letters to Warner Brothers saying how he should never have been Batman because he was Beetlejuice back in the day.
Mr.
Christian
Nanny as
Bale.
well was his character before Batman, like a real out there comedy role as well. So yeah.
So you got Keaton, and obviously he proved everyone wrong. You got Val Kilmer on. I mean, I don't know the reaction to Val Kilmer at the time, but it was following Michael Keaton. And Val Kilmer, probably the biggest name to take the mantle at the time of a Batman film being made. Maybe him or Clooney. And you could argue they're the two that didn't work, right? And then you got Bale, who is, I don't want to say an up-and-coming actor in 2005, but he'd done a lot of films at that point in time. He's starting to not become a household name, but Batman threw him into it. But this is probably one of the best actors of a generation, who is like, I don't want to say defied the role either, but, not everyone backed him at the beginning. And by the time Dark Knight Rises came out, the whole world, Batman Fever, Batman this, everything, that take has helped push the film into the level, not just that film, but comic book films. Those 3 films have done so much for the industry in that regard. And obviously you got Ben Affleck, who was absolutely annihilated at the time of being casted. And I hadn't seen Daredevil, so I didn't understand the outrage. I'd only seen a few of his films, not even apparently his best. And I've still not seen, the one with him and Matt Damon from with Robin Williams. That's going to really annoy me now.
Good Will Hunting.
That's the one. I've still not seen it.
End this video right now and go watch Good Will Hunting.
One day, I'll see it one day. And I remember seeing Argo, and I was like, he can direct. And I think long-term, Affleck only took the role on to direct his own Batman film, which is a pretty insane move. Like, imagine not just being Batman, but deciding to then write and direct your own Batman film. Like, that's pretty special, to be fair to him. And obviously, I'd say Affleck is a really interesting one. I don't want to say he proved everyone wrong. I think he's a very good Batman. And I think he's a very good Batman that was robbed of having his own film. And that is not Ben Affleck's fault. And I think a lot of more important stuff happened. His personal life, obviously what happened with Justice League as well, with Zack Snyder's daughter. There's a lot of real life things that people don't speak about. But for whatever reason, Ben Affleck's going to be Batman this year. That's a good thing. For whatever reason, he didn't get his own film. But his chapter's not done. But I think he's having his Andrew Garfield moment. It didn't work out. It definitely wasn't his fault. And I think come November, people will be like, you know what? Affleck was all right. People gave him a hard time for no reason. And here we are with Rob Pattinson. Edward Cullen, Cedric Diggory, back when he was cast. Now, I'm not going to bully anyone or take the piss. Have either of you seen? I'm not going to include Tenet on this. Have anyone seen anything post Twilight? Maybe not necessarily the time of him being cast, but have you seen much between him being cast and this? I'm really curious because I've seen a few. I'm really curious on what other people think.
I have seen absolutely nothing. I've seen the first Twilight movie. And I think, was it Something for Elephants with Michelle Williams in it? I think I've seen a bit of that. I've not even seen the whole movie. And when he was cast as Batman, I was like, really? Okay. I suppose if anyone could be Batman, I suppose, and put someone in there and brought them up. But certainly when it was announced, I was not sold on the casting.
Yeah, I was the same. I mean, post Twilight, I watched a few of the Twilight films. Shouldn't probably announce that, but
I've seen 3 of them. It's fine.
But yeah, after that, I didn't see anything from Robert Pattinson apart from Tenet. But yeah, when it was announced, like I said earlier, when it was announced, I was like, okay, this is an interesting choice because going from sort of Ben Affleck, Christian Bale, they're more sort of more bulked up people compared to what I remember Robert Pattinson as. So I thought, okay, well, if they bulk him up a little bit, maybe it'll work. But yeah, I mean, after watching the film, I think it worked really well.
And that's kind of where I'm like I think if there were any doubters before, and I think it's absolutely fine to doubt if you. I think Matt Reeves did a great interview. He said if you've seen anything from post Twilight to the Batman, you'll probably have been alright with it. If you haven't, you might be funny with it. But I think post Batman, I think there's probably universal agreement, right, that he's bloody fantastic. Now the Bruce Wayne stuff we can get into a little bit later. I think some people have been a bit too harsh on the Bruce Wayne stuff, but it's definitely worth bringing up. But I think his performance, you know, if anyone's seen his interviews, he likes to take the piss. I think obviously with Twilight, he had such a hard time off the press. A lot of other stuff. Obviously, he was with Kristen Stewart for a time, who's also gone off to have a magnificent career post Twilight as well. She's got a first Oscar nomination as well. I think she's the only American actress to ever win the French version of Best Actress at the Oscars or something. Seeing him go back to doing a blockbuster was the big thing for me. That if he's willing to go back on putting himself not just being Batman, but like being the forefront of a franchise that is a big franchise inherently, I am absolutely all for it. And obviously, I'm a massive Nolan fan, so when I watched Tenet, I very much was excited for Tenet. I was like, well, if he was crap, Nolan wouldn't have cast him. And then I've seen Lighthouse, which I always recommend to people. Very, very weird, but as psychological as you could get, a good time, another really good film. And he did this amazing interview where he says that he just loves playing weirdos. And so if you really think about it, Batman's probably the biggest weirdo on the planet. And again, I just love that with all these interviews, he's answering their questions and he's not taking the piss out of the interviewer, but he's very intelligent how he answers them because he's just turning it into comedy and he'll spur the conversation to something else. And any of his interviews, I recommend, like they're asking him like what he stole from the set and he could only talk about socks. I think that's Ali Plum from BBC that did that, and all this weird stuff. And it's just so amazing seeing him. He's a bit like an Andrew Garfield, maybe one that's not as popular. That's really unfair. But everyone knows Andrew Garfield's going to be witty with them. I don't think they expected Pattinson because he plays these brooding, darker characters. You'd think he would be more like a Christian Bale that's more serious, but he's just absolutely here to rinse people and have a laugh. And how I feel with his Batman, I use this word quite a bit in the spoiler preview. I called it like the definitive performance. And definitive is a really hard word to sort of go into. So the kind of approach I'm coming from is that comics off the page into the screen type thing, that if I was going to take a round table of everyone in the world and say, pick one of these 7 Batman actors that best shows the character, who he is, what it means to wear the suit, I would honestly pick this. I know it's only been out 3 days. Now, do I think it is the best film? No, I'll speak at the end. But it is the best Batman film. There's a massive difference, I think, between best film and best Batman film. Everyone knows what the other one's going to be. And I think it used to be Batman Begins until this film. I think in terms of the character, what they do, following them, their story, their arc and everything, this film has just elevated the character to a new level. And even against the fact it's a 3-hour-long film, I didn't feel that runtime at all. And I think a lot of people, even people that aren't big on comic book films, have said that they didn't feel it. It didn't feel that long. And it's really interesting that, because I think nowadays, not that we're accustomed to 3-hour films, you know, it used to be like back in the day, about the golden age of Hollywood. Then it all dropped to 90 minutes. Now we're getting back to these longer ones. I think when, the 3 or 4 highest grossing films in history are all like almost 3 hours plus now, you can get away with a longer film. And I think, people are invested in these characters, in these stories. If you've got a 3 hour side of story, go do it. And this is where I kind of feel with this film that, not to sort of harp it to Dark Knight again, but when the Dark Knight was like 2 hours 25, I was like outraged. Like, how on earth is this film this long? And here we are, as every year's gone by and these films get bigger and bigger. I think you really have to look at like the audiences aren't invested in the time. They're invested on a quality product. They would rather have a 3-hour deep bonded connection that's a murder mystery than a 90-minute all-out action brawl. Get it done and dusted. And it's really interesting seeing where these sort of cinema viewers go now. And I kind of wondered how you both felt about the runtime before the film and even after the film. Were you worried or slightly nervous?
For me, the 3-hour runtime was the only thing that put me off the midnight screening. And it's why I went the IMAX at 7 o'clock one, because it was a school night. I'm like, you know what? I just don't think a 3-hour movie, obviously then you've got your trailers and your adverts as well. So you're looking at like nearly 4 hours by the time you get out of the cinema. I was like, I'm not quite ready for that. But you're right, the time ticked by so quickly with this because you're invested in the story. I'll be honest, I think once the I'm going to get to it later. Once the floods start, I think it was a bit. The last 20 minutes were a bit like, "Come on, we'll get to the end of the story now." It kind of just there's some points I had issues in there, but that's fine. We'll get that in a bit. But yeah, the runtime itself, other than that, flowed through so quickly. And go back to just Pattinson. I just want to say I love the fact that this was mostly him in the cowl, in the cape and the cowl for the majority of the movie. That he was Batman. It says the Batman, and it certainly is a Batman movie because while Bruce Wayne is there, he's not the main focus. He doesn't know how to be Bruce Wayne yet. I'm sure we're going to talk about that in a bit, but I loved how much of the time when he was on screen, he was the Batman. Like from the start of that movie, he was Batman. There was no hiding him, well, in the shadows for a little bit, but there was no keeping him away. We'll show you Batman in 40 minutes when we're in the movie. It was like, here's Batman, let's go. And I really, really, really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah, I didn't really feel the runtime. I mean, that's coming off. I mean, 3 hours. That's okay. I mean, because I watched Dune about 4 or 5 times in the cinema, and that was like 2 hours and 45. And then coming from Spider-Man, which was about what 2.5 was it? I mean, yeah, 3 hours didn't really put me off, but yeah, it was a school night, so I was aware of the time. I did have to check my watch at one point just to check how long we had left, but it wasn't out of the boredom. It was just the fact that I was aware of the time and I had work the next day and stuff like that. But yeah, as a film, the 3 hours flew by really well.
Yeah, and we've got a quick comment from Hassan. We felt all 3 hours, but that was because they're ridiculously hot in the cinema, 29 degrees. That's the thing I miss most about lockdown is the well, not lockdown, but when the cinemas opened after lockdown and you could go in and you just have like empty seats next to you, you could chill out, put your bags everywhere. When you're going back into these, I think the only ones I've really had, I would say, is Spider-Man, Batman, and Bond, where it's been like every single seat is going to go. No, I mean, June was kind of busy, but not too like. June was a very good hit, but the general audience, I don't think, were there. It still made a hell of money and was very good numbers-wise for a film that was released online on the same day. But like the cinemas weren't luckily that bad with it. But sort of with this film, it's been amazing seeing how many people have been tweeting about it, people that I follow that aren't even big on films, all tweeting about it, saying how much they enjoyed it. And sort of with Pattinson, I really hope a lot of people do get to see his other films because he's such a good actor and he's very sort of not specific with what he works on because I hate using words like that, but he's worked with a lot of very good directors, and the certain directors he's worked with are very different to normal actors, I would say. He has a sort of specific niche, and I think he's the kind of actor that he'll happily do a series like Batman, but he'll know at the same time he'll probably do 2 or 3 indie films in the meantime and help get them onto a new platform or vice versa, that kind of stuff. But just going back to him in this film, Dave, you mentioned that most of the film's him in the cowl. That's something I loved. And I think, going back like 10, 20, 30 years ago, you can't do that. The concept of Batman is still new to people. This is a bloke in a suit. And ultimately back then, he couldn't even turn his head. That's only been like, was it Dark Knight, the first one where he could turn his neck or something like that? Like, when you limit your actor for so much nowadays, you can do pretty much anything. And what I loved of this is something we've never really seen before, which was, Bruce Wayne essentially at the start of this film is dead. Only the Batman exists. And the big character arc for me with Batman in this is his acceptance of Bruce Wayne, that half of his character. And when we do get the scene of Alfred in the hospital, and I will speak about probably a little bit more detail, that to me absolutely sets up what I think is going to be a sequel involving a famous comic storyline, but also a character arc for Batman himself. But here we are in 2022. Do we need another origin? Do we need to tell people his 2 parents got shot in front of him? Do people really need to see that again, hear about it again? Instead, we were able to do some new things, and having him in the suit for 3 hours, I thought was really interesting. Even going from like the suit design to the mechanics of the fighting, this character felt. I'm going to compare it to the Arkham games more than anything. I feel that this universe itself, we're just thrown in there. Doesn't matter what your history is with the character, with Batman, with games, comics, films, whatever. You can jump into this film, and you're going to learn everything you need to know about him in the opening few scenes. But the scenes I loved with Bruce Wayne, like out with his rucksack, and his whole concept is that I think Matt Reeves did a great interview where he said that Matt Reeves his Bruce Wayne is, if Batman was walking through a crowd, there'd be no crime because Batman's there. But the idea that he can only catch crime being Bruce Wayne and being able to change into suit, I thought was a really cool dynamic that we've not seen before. Even going to the nightclub scenes, the opening scenes, I thought that's a really smart way of addressing the character, and even the design of the, people originally criticized like the stitching on the helmet and all that weird stuff. It's like a compact Batman suit, and it's great, and I really enjoyed it. I just don't know what anyone thought on these like newer things we've never been able to see before.
My sister went to see the movie on Friday, and her major complaint was his outfit squeaks so much, but no one can hear him coming. I think it is just that new aesthetic of all that rubber and sort of the way it's all built, that when you see him and hear all this noise of it, it's just like, yeah, you would hear him coming all the time. But no, I thought it was really well done. I love that he puts eye makeup on. I love it's just such a simple thing, him putting on the eye makeup around his eyes to darken it, to fit in with the rest of the suit, whereas we've not seen anybody do that in Batman Returns. When he pulls off his mask, he's got eye makeup on at one moment, then he rips off the helmet to talk to Catwoman, and it's gone. He's got clear eyes. It's like, it's part of the aesthetic of the look, and I love that they took that into account as well. The suit looks phenomenal. Like, you can see it's a work in progress suit. You can see there's bits and pieces being put on, and had a big satchel on the side, obviously carries some like the grappling gun in and stuff, things like that. So there's big things like that. I just thought the whole thing just worked as an actual suit. I loved that when we finally saw him take out the what was essentially a knife to cut down the wire towards the end. It was just a little clip-in thing. And people have been thinking, oh, it's the two guns that killed his parents, and it wasn't. It's just a knife facade inside of the bat thing. And I did fear that we might get another origin story when we first started seeing the kid playing in the room that was being watched. And he was dressed as a ninja, and then the parents thought, oh, we might do another origin story, because if you see a kid at the start of a Batman movie, you initially go, oh, that's little Bruce Wayne, we're about to see what happened. But the fact we didn't, and we got sort of a new take on what happened to his parents, and especially his mother, I thought it was really Martha. Sorry, it's too much Justice League for you. So just thought that was a really nice take on it. Seemed like it was going to go one way, and then took you straight into the story with the Riddler watching. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, I think with the origin story, I mean, we've seen it so many times now that we don't need to see it again. I think Batman's such a popular character that everybody knows both of his parents got shot and he was an orphan. It's similar to the way that Marvel did Spider-Man. We didn't need to see him getting bit by a radioactive spider. We know all that, so just crack on with the actual sort of development of the superhero. So in this case would be Batman, and you can tell that the suit was really good. I think I like the fact that the little knife came out, and you can tell, like, I'm not sure what was on his arms, on his forearms, but that was a really interesting detail that I picked up on. And the fact that he's got the grappling gun just hanging around, basically, you can tell it is, like, just to repeat what Dave said, it is a work in progress suit, basically.
Yeah, and I love the term work in progress, because this is year 2, but this isn't it is Batman, right? But I do also feel it's work in progress, that he isn't fully there yet. And this is where my Arkham comparison comes from. We get the opening scene where he's in the fight. He takes a few punches. Nothing around Batman being punched. Some people won't like that. But it's like, when you're on a combat on the Arkham games, you get 10 and some absolute bellend hits you and you get really aggravated. You just batter them. I love that that's like Batman's approach to this film. That if he's going to take a hit, he's just going to massacre the person that did it straight away. And it's almost a fundamental character. He isn't perfect. Like, yes, he's a hero. Yes, he's probably the best hero. But he isn't a perfect character. He's not Superman. Like, he's not designed to be the best at punching, the best at this, the best at that. He is this like amalgamation of grief possessed into a bat. And I'm sorry, quick on my Hassan. His arms had whistling birds a la Boba Fett and the Mandalorian. And what I kind of want to touch upon, what you both said about Batman, work in progress, I'm going to actually jump onto something I didn't put in the schedule, but has to be spoken about, the Batmobile. When this was announced, I'm going to be absolutely honest with you, I hated the design. Maybe it's because I've got a massive attachment to the Nolan one. I've never been keen on the 89 one, in truth. I know a lot of people love it. I always loved the 60s one. I know it's just a sports car that's stupid. And I think when Matt Reeves was making the car, He even joked saying that he'd modeled it off the 60s car and people were going mad. Batman was not going to drive around in an open top vehicle in the modern era. But when you see the car in this film, and maybe it's because there was a horrible Lego set that looks awful as well. Actually, I'm going to say that the Lego Technics that looks abysmal. It's like a character. When you get the charge, when you hear it like squeal with that scene of the penguin, and then like the whole cinema was vibrating in the IMAX as well when it revved. I was like, holy fuck. The penguin face is just absolutely priceless when he realizes what's about to go down. But even the Batmobile, which I'm going to say, obviously, I love the design. They've released some nicer photos like from the studio of it. Obviously, they did a big event in London where people could go and go see the Batmobile in person. It looked all a lot better than the original photo, so maybe that was that kind of thing. But I feel like the car is still also a work in progress that is instantly iconic. But by the time we get a second or a third or a fourth or whatever film, I feel that we're going to get these little improvements, maybe on the costume, maybe on the Batmobile. But I still feel that we're going to get a Batman that's constantly evolving and bettering himself. And I know it's maybe a look ahead to the future, but I want to kind of know, like, firstly, what your thoughts on the Batmobile, but also where do we stand with his Batman? Is he going to get better, or is he at the level he's going to be at forever?
Oh, the Batmobile, the roar you're talking about. I know what the exact one, that penguin scene, when it's just sat and it revved the engine, and you're right, sitting at that IMAX. And this movie was, the sound designer has had just an amazing time with this. Every punch and kick and just little sounds as well, and points where there's hardly any sound. It's so well engineered right throughout the movie. But when that engine roared, you felt that through every inch of your being. It was incredible to hear the noise of such a big engine. I thought it was nice. It was obviously just a car he's got, and he's put little bits on it. You can see tiny little sort of inflections that it's got, the little bit like the wings and things. So it's got tiny little bits that are going to look like a bat on there, but nothing major on there. It is going to absolutely be something we'll see evolve over the next few movies. And I certainly think Pattinson as a Batman, or this Batman, Bruce Wayne, will grow as we get further down. I hope we get more than just, we'll definitely get a sequel. I do hope we'll get maybe more than that, at least a trilogy to see out this character before they want to move in another direction. But hopefully this one might be here to stay, because I think he has the potential now. The fact he's now accepted his Bruce Wayne persona more than just the loner kid who was just Batman, and Bruce Wayne was his side character they didn't really pay much attention to. I do think we're going to see a much more developed Batman as we go on, especially like the way he's going to probably build up a suit, get some nipples on there, make it look proper.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, with the Batmobile, I mean, when the first images came out, I was like, this looks insanely good. It looks fun. Compared, like, I wasn't a big fan of like the Tumbler from the Dark Knight trilogy. I thought it was just a bit too cumbersome. Whereas this is just, I mean, just having that one sort of exhaust with the fire coming out, it's just, it's insane. And the roar, yeah, like the roar of the actual engine, it's basically like a muscle car that's just been added onto. And you can see it in some of the before you actually see it. You can see when he's in the Batcave, he's actually working on it. You can see the engine in the background and stuff like that. So you can tell that he's like adding onto it or working on it, and it is a work in progress. And yeah, that's the same with Batman. Like, he is in year 2. He was taking like punches and kicks. I mean, towards the end in the when the floods happen and he's fighting all the Riddler goons, as we'll go into later, I'm sure he's getting shot. He is getting shot, but the suits are armored that he's actually able to move on. So yeah, I think we will get to a point where Batman is sort of like a lot more, what's the word, more competent with his, for lack of a better word, competent with his fighting skills and being able to like sort of like do more. But yeah, I mean, with it being year 2, you can expect that sort of like, again, work in progress of his combat style and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's really good point. I mean, what I want to kind of leap onto quickly is Alfred, right? So, because it's going to tie into the Bruce Wayne stuff. I absolutely love Andy Serkis in everything he's ever been in. I don't think he's ever given a bad performance either. Doesn't matter whether it's motion capture or live action, he can do it. And I remember when this film was announced, I was praying for an Andy Serkis Penguin, and I was furious to find out that he hadn't been cast as the Penguin. I'm so glad I was in the wrong, because we'll get to talk about Penguin in a bit, which is fucking incredible from Colin Farrell. But his Alfred, I really like, because Jeremy Irons, he didn't get the chance to do a lot with it. I liked what we got with him. I liked that his Alfred was working on the tech with Bruce Wayne in those films. It was a really cool little thing that Batman's involved. And obviously the Michael Caine Alfred, I think, is probably going to go down as the unparalleled performance. He set the level for what Alfred is going to be from that day onwards across those 3 films. It's also worth adding that he had 3 films to do all that. And also Michael Gough was just legendary in saying, right, I'm just going to add him on there because he was ultimately the butler, the first one. And not Alfred, Alfred and Serkis in this, I liked it. They'd kind of hinted that he might be a bit different. There might be a fractured relationship, but Bruce Wayne's pretty horrid to him, in truth. Like, you get the very obvious, you're not my father type Uncle Ben line that always happens. And I didn't expect an Alfred to be so, not crux of the story, but with this film, I mean, it's spoilers, so we can talk about it. The Alfred character is obviously kept the secret from Bruce that his dad wasn't the Boy Scout that I think Falcone calls him, doesn't he? That he is very, he did make a mistake. He tried to fix it, and that may have got him killed. We don't know to this day what got him killed. But with their fractured relationship, I thought it was really interesting because the lack of Bruce Wayne, a lot of people are criticizing, and this is where I'm kind of broken, because the whole purpose of his character arc in this film is that he has to accept that he is both Bruce Wayne and Batman. He cannot function only as one. The two must coexist. Whether it wants to be his main person or not, Alfred will be there. Alfred's own butler, I don't know her name. That was a weird thing. I thought it was Jerry from Succession when I first watched it. It's not. But even the cufflinks, getting the cufflinks from Alfred, I thought was a big moment when he's, you're not even a Wayne, why'd you have them? He's like, well, your father gave me to him. And it's like Batman's like, I'm a right bastard, aren't I? But it's when you get the bomb scene, and I thought Alfred was going to, oh my god, they're going to kill Alfred. This is going to be way more dark. I was like, this is why there's a new butler, because we're going to get someone new for a few more films. And obviously Alfred's alive, but the whole function of their relationship is that he accepts him, as Bruce Wayne is accepting Alfred, and that he is there for him. And he speaks about, I never ever thought I'd have that same fear again, but I haven't. I absolutely love the Alfred stuff. Yes, there's only 3 or 4 scenes, but I would argue that they are some of the most important scenes in this film. And if this franchise is going to move forward, which it is, I'm really excited to see their relationship probably improve, because they've got good chemistry anyway. When they're doing the riddles, I really like that sort of stuff. But I feel that we're going to get, heading into a potential sequel, if we're going to get Hush, which we'll speak about a little later on, Batman and Rob Pattinson, Bruce Wayne and Rob Pattinson will be the forefront of the next film. And I think we're going to get this public Bruce Wayne coming into the public, doing the right thing for the city, rebuilding the city, all that kind of stuff. I think this film has set up what is to come with the Wayne side of his family arc. I don't know if I'm the one that sort of read it that deep, maybe.
No, I think you're right. I think it's certainly the family aesthetic of that. It was it certainly was a broken relationship at the start. And I just think Serkis played it so well as this father figure who has lost his adoptive son somewhere along the line to this Batman character, and was trying with all his might. I think he mentioned at one point, he says, after Bruce Wayne's returned, and that was just because he was going out to the funeral when he was actually dressed as Bruce Wayne. He was going to go out, and I think Alfred, you saw a little bit of joy again in Alfred, like he was going to see the boy again that he's been looking for all this time, and not this dark creature who's going out beating people throughout the night. I thought Andy Serkis played it so well. It also gave light to one of the scenes to my favorite Easter egg in the whole movie was the Shakespeare bust in the background of one of their scenes when they're having breakfast. I was like, oh, of course that's there, because that just made me smile, because that was just 66 all over. And the woman in the house just gave me total Aunt Harriet vibes from again the 66 version, that they had this older woman in the house. Just like, of course, yeah. It just harkened back. It was just this little hint of this past that was there with Batman. I thought it was really nice. But the Shakespeare bust made me just smile. It was really great. I think you're right that we're going to get this change on Bruce Wayne's character. I think we focused this film on the Batman, and I do think the next movie you will maybe see less of him. Not in an action scene, like you will see him still as Batman, but I think you will see much more Bruce Wayne as he's taken on that. This whole movie is him not knowing how to be Bruce Wayne, and I think that's what pains Alfred. That's where their relationship is, and the bomb going off and them having that lovely that scene that in the hospital where they finally sort of like they hold hands at the end. It was just this relationship that was coming back together as they held hands. That he was, look, you're the only person I actually love. And just like, it seems like it's probably the first time he'd said it in his whole life with Alfred, that he told him that's how he felt about him. And it was a really beautiful moment for that film. But I thought the Andy Serkis was excellent in that role.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Andy Serkis was great. I mean, of what we saw of him, he was great. Yeah, you can tell in the beginning they have a fractured relationship because sort of Robert Pattinson or Batman isn't really paying him much attention. I mean, he's getting him to help with the codex and the riddles and stuff like that, but he's using him more as a tool and rather than a person. But then, like when you get the scene of him when he realizes that the bomb is for Bruce Wayne and Alfred's gonna end up picking it up, and he's like frantically trying to call Alfred just so that he can sort of warn him about the bomb, and then you see like it all lines up. Whereas when somebody does answer the phone, the bomb's already gone off and the police are there, but then you think, oh no, Alfred's dead, but turns out he's okay. Well, as okay as he can be by getting hit by a bomb square in the face. But yeah, even in that hospital scene, you can see them sort of like reconciling and sort of like Bruce Wayne is understanding that Alfred is there for him, and that he can sort of lean on him with more of the human side rather than the Batman side and stuff like that. And like finally realizing that Alfred is a person rather than a tool for him to use.
No, and I think that's the big thing. Like, tool to use is a really good term because I hadn't thought of that, but he is using him for the codes at the start of the riddles, and he doesn't care about him. And him coming into in the basement is annoying him that he's basically being spoken to, and you know when you got that sequence with I think it's like it's already happened type thing, and it's when the envelope turns over and it says fireproof, you know it's about to go, and and when a film can create that. Could he actually die? And it's that kind of question. You don't get asked that a lot in these kinds of films anymore. Could this character die? Yes, at that moment, I did feel that. And it's very rare to feel that with characters that will probably never die on screen, unless it's going to be dragged out across like 5 films or something. Now, obviously, a big part of this is also Zoe Kravitz. We got a trailer called The Bat and the Cat, a new take on Catwoman. One of the most anticipated things, I don't know if you've all seen the photo shoots that have been promoting this film. Rob Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz chemistry is like undeniably like insane to the point people think they're a real couple, which they're not. They're just very good at doing promotions for a film. They are actors after all. How do we all feel with her Catwoman? Because I like Batman and many of the characters in this, they aren't fully their character yet. They're not in this not ridiculous costume, but she's very much like in normal, well, not normal clothes, but she's in like a tight suit, but there's no. It's not a headpiece as Catwoman. It's almost like a normal hat with the eyes and the mouth and other stuff cut out and propped up. And I've really liked her in this film. I think making her the daughter of Falcone added a character development piece I didn't think we would not need or not see coming, but it just gave her her own story arc. And the whole the Annika stuff, these two characters met out of a necessity to the plot. They are both working the same case. Why wouldn't they team up with one another? And I think that's where I really enjoyed it, that sometimes in these kind of films, they'll chuck in a character to say they've been chucked in. And it's just the sake of saying we can finally use this character. They'll now be in this film. Whereas from day one, this Catwoman feels like she is both an ally and a thorn. And she's going to be around for all these films with him. And I can't wait to see more because I thought Zoe Kravitz was amazing. And I can't wait to see what more we get from her.
She's really growing as an actress from where it was X-Men First Class where she played.
Yeah. The spitting fly.
I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from that, she's really grown as an actress. From that, not saying she was terrible, but she wasn't this woman I saw in this movie a couple of nights ago. She's grown so much as an actress, and I thought she was excellent as Catwoman. I love how they've got again a new interpretation of a very similar. She's a cat thief, and she's in a Trinity suit for some reason. That's what they've gone with, and the balaclava with just the cutouts I thought was really nice, the aesthetic to it. But yeah, I thought she was absolutely fantastic. I thought she stood shoulder to shoulder with Pattinson in every scene she was in with him. I loved the Falcone as the father story. I liked that when she kind of admitted it the first time, it sounded like he knew that she was his daughter. And then when she confronted him and then she mentioned her mother, so he had no idea that it was his daughter all along. So when Bruce, I think you said you didn't know you had a relationship with him, and I don't know if when you see that there'd been something a bit more sinister behind it when she was obviously working in the club, and it just had all this connotation that I just thought she played so well. I really do hope she's back for the next movie because I thought her and Pattinson bouncing off one another were absolutely excellent.
Yeah, I mean, so the first time that I saw Zoe Kravitz in a film was actually a film called Dope. It might be really obscure, but yeah, that was the first time that I saw her in a film, and like that was quite a few years ago. But since then, like I've seen her in a few things. But yeah, now that she played it really well, as a character as well, it's really interesting that they linked her character to Falcone as much as they did, whereas they didn't just like shove her in saying, "Oh yeah, Catwoman's in this film, have at it." She was actually an integral part of that, and she was like sort of she had her own stuff going on parallel with Batman's sort of story and stuff like that. Whereas like you could split it into two and have Zoe Kravitz have her own film as Catwoman and her dealing with the sort of Falcone thing, and then having Batman and Bruce Wayne dealing with the Riddler thing. It worked like really well integrally. So yeah, I think she played it really well.
I'm glad you brought that because I didn't really clock it on the first viewing, or maybe second in truth. The whole point of it, she was already doing her own score. Like, yes, she's helping her friend Annika, but to get that job in the club, all her goal was to ever do was get that money from Falcone. And I love that she's already working her own mission. And obviously, she befriends. I know that they've come out saying that she's bi and that Annika's a girlfriend. I'm going to be honest and say that they can tell us that, but it doesn't. You don't really see it. I'm not going to sit there and say they're ducking from it. I'm glad they're acknowledging she is bi, but they're not. Not that you need to see it. It just being told it when you don't get to see it can sometimes be frustrating with films. That's like the one criticism I have. It's such a minor criticism though, because I think she is excellent in it. And the whole Falcone stuff is just amazing. I mean, we'll talk about it later on, but I didn't expect to get Falcone involved, which I thought would be like Begins. We'll get a couple of scenes. He's done and dusted within 10 minutes of the film or something. But yeah, he's literally running the city, which is amazing. But yeah, the Zoe Kravitz stuff, I think she's great as an actress. I've not seen the new Soderbergh film that's on Sky that she's in. That was like shot over lockdown. And I think that's like her first leading role or one of the first leading roles. It did make me laugh though, because coming out of the screening yesterday, I heard somebody say that's the one from Fantastic Beasts, and it did make me realize that, oh shit, she was in Fantastic Beasts too, wasn't she? And then it made me realize I'm probably going to have to actually rewatch those soon, which is even worse. But that being said, yeah, I think she's here for long term. I don't have too much more to say in absolute truth. So if you guys want to, we'll talk about Gordon before the villains. Then I've got anything else to say on Zoe Kravitz. She'll talk being our favorite scenes. I'll probably bring it up again.
I just thought she was just so good and way better than I maybe even expected going in. I was hooked on her character. The thing about her having the girlfriend, I picked up on that when I was watching it. That was why they were the same house. That's why they were together so much. It felt to me like it was a natural relationship. That's why she was so angered by what had happened to her, and obviously when she heard the video of her when she called her, it was just so harrowing for her, and she played that just to a T. I just thought, yeah, she was excellent. She was probably right up there with my highlight of the movie.
And Hassan's also put she's excellent. Big Little Lies, working with so many Oscar wins. I've not seen that. Is that the Reese Witherspoon show? I feel like I've heard of it, or it was really popular a couple of years ago when it first came out. That being said, though, let's talk about Jeffrey Wright playing the moral compass in an immoral world. We're not talking James Bond and Felix Leiter today. We are talking Commissioner Gordon. I went into this film thinking he's going to be one of my favorite parts of this. I think commission. Well, he's not Commissioner Gordon. Is he Lieutenant or Officer Gordon in
Lieutenant.
this one?
Yeah, he's Lieutenant Gordon.
I'm going to be blunt. It's really hard to get it pre this film coming out. Sorry, when they said we're going to get Gordon and he's not going to be the commissioner yet, I thought, "Ooh, are we doing the whole Dark Knight trilogy? Not trilogy again, but you know the big selling point of the other Gordon was that we're going to see his rise through the ranks." I'm so glad it was the opposite of this. I'm assuming he'll be commissioner by the start of the next one anyway. But what I loved is that we got Gordon not just as an ally. He is literally working the entire case with Batman. These two have forged this working relationship off screen across the first year or two. And you don't need to see that as a viewer. I know it's kind of what I said a minute ago, but you've got it built up that these guys trust each other. They don't trust anybody else. They trust each other. And it's this amazing, duet where they're going to, it's what the Penguin calls them as, you two are going to start harmonizing next or something. And I just think Jeffrey Wright's in everything I've ever seen Jeffrey Wright in, he's never given a bad performance. And I'm really glad I've not seen Westworld, which is the one they all talk about, but he's starting to get these meatier roles, these bigger roles. Yes, he's still a supporting actor in this, but being Commissioner Gordon in a modern day Batman film where he is going to get a character arc, I don't think it's a role to be sniffed at. And to go be the one after Gary Oldman, I'm going to be honest, I don't really count J. Jonah Jameson. We got a scene, 2 scenes max. It's really unfair. And does anyone really see anything but I didn't even call him J.K. Simmons. Sorry, I've just realized. Does anyone see anything except J. Jonah Jameson? I think Jeffrey Wright in this film is exceptional, and for the whole noir vibe as well. He's got such a not commanding voice, but he has a voice perfect for a noir type film. With him just talking over a case, how he speaks with people, he just has this voice that suits this world. And I know it's just a really random thing to talk about, but I could take a monologue of him and just watching the rain drip out of a window in Gotham City, and I'd be like, yeah, it matches. And I don't know if that cast-wise is a weird compliment, but I think he's one of maybe after Pattinson's Zoe Kravitz, I'll say he's the best thing in this film.
I think he's very well suited to the part. He plays it really well. I love that you're right, that aesthetic that he turns up the first crime scene with Batman in tow already. It's not like he gets to the crime scene, sees what goes on and calls Batman. Before he's even at the crime scene, Batman's already with him. I love that cop that tries to stop him from getting in and puts his hand on his chest. No. It works so well. And Jeffrey Wright is such a good character. I mean, he was the Watcher in the What If cartoon series as well, the animated series. So that voice, that timbre that he's got, just works really well as this. The only Batman tells him you're a good cop, and he's the only one. Apart from you get that crowd at the end when they're taking down Falcone, and you see all the cops that weren't under him. So there's a smattering of them. But I think it works really well. His character is so well suited. I can't wait to see how he grows with the movie franchise as well.
Yeah, it's from the first scene when they turn up together, and it's like Lieutenant Gordon has Batman as his partner. It's like they are partners in the force, where, to the point where he's sticking up for Batman, getting him into these crime scenes where he shouldn't be, allowing him to touch stuff that he shouldn't be. Like when they're in the Riddler's apartment, and he's allowed to touch that sort of stuff, and police officers are saying, "Oh yeah, should he be touching that?" It's like, well, he's got gloves on, it's fine. Like he is Batman. He's not tampering with evidence. He is Batman. He's supposed to be there. I think that overarching, he is more leaning into the sort of detective role as Batman, whereas in the others, he's more of just a brute force. He's using more of his mind, and like in that police scene where he's been arrested, and he's playing with Gordon, about Gordon's gonna get him out, and it's like, do you have to punch me that hard? It's like they sort of have that sort of nice relationship that you don't see it, but it's obviously that it's been forged and it is going strong since he started being Batman.
Yeah, I'm going about it because the one thing a lot of people have spoken about online, he keeps calling him man, and everyone's loving the fact that he isn't. What do we do, Batman, or what do we do? Like these terms, using terms like man. I think he even calls him chief at one point, or like or something. And
Yeah.
I love their relationship. That he's obviously got to a level with him where it's not even banter, but it is like they are partners, that he's using more than the word Batman or not referring to him. And it's these small little nuances that make it. And as you say, the scene of the police officers is just amazing. I keep laughing. It's not really funny, but like when he punches him and it's just the hundreds of cops making that like, I was comparing it to like South Park. Like, in South Park, whenever there's an angry mob, you get the same like sound effects of people screaming. Like that's what all the police were reminding me of in those scenes. And their relationship with each other is great. And obviously, when we get to the end of the film, he's at the right hand side of the mayor when she's saying, we need to rebuild the city. So one thing I kind of would really love to see from the sequel is that obviously the bat signal isn't on the GCPD building. If Gordon does become police commissioner, which I probably reckon is what's going to happen by the start of the next film, it'd be really cool if we got the light on top of the cop building. It's such a minor detail, but it goes to show that their relationship strengthens. And kind of with Gordon talking about the police, when you get to the Falcone sort of death scene, it's the fact that the whole police, they're not just there to take in Falcone. They're like visually standing with Batman. And it's that, when they're working with each other, when they're running up to the building and he's already in there. I love that this film just develops their respect towards him. And how he is amongst them. And again, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep going back to the Arkham games and maybe the animated series, but because Batman was always in with them. And obviously one of the really intriguing things with not just the Nolan films, but you'd say that maybe the first Michael Keaton one was that Batman is a vigilante and he isn't the law. And obviously the Nolan films took that into the furthest direction possible, that they learned to trust him and then went against him. And, Keaton's he developed into an ally. I love that this film has took him at the start from weird bloke they don't trust to guy they're going to let be around them. And I think that's really interesting as a viewer and also as a fan that we get to see this growth. And, if the film wasn't 3 hours, you're not going to get 5 and 10 minutes here or there to develop these minor things. But because the film is longer, they're not wasting screen time. They're still doing character development, even if it's not characters that he's with. And I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong, the cop that doesn't let him into the room for the mayor's murder is the same cop that's fine with him being in the room in the Riddler's apartment. I might want to double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's the same cop. But that's all I can say on Gordon. It's like it's just been glowing on all these characters. I don't know if anyone else has got anything more they want to say on him, but I just think he's perfect. Jeffrey Wright.
And you're right. I just that fact they just call him Chief. I love that. Really, the main characters don't call him Batman. Even Catwoman calls him Vengeance all the way through. Never Batman. It's always Vengeance, which I thought was a really nice move as well. But yeah, just excellent. That I've not got any problem throughout the whole cast where I thought they weren't right for this.
Yeah, he's not referenced as Batman in the whole film. No one calls him Batman, which I know is coming out of it.
One newspaper clipping, isn't it, on the wall? And it's like the typical question mark.
Yeah.
Is there a Batman around? And
but I mean, characters like the main characters, nobody does reference him as Batman. And I think that's because we're in year 2 and nobody knows what to call him. I mean, when referencing the Christopher Nolan film, when he gets asked who he is, and he said, "I'm Batman," in his rough and gruff voice. Whereas in this one, he calls himself Vengeance, like I am Vengeance. So it's like that. He hasn't sort of landed on the Batman name yet.
I did think the final words of this film would have been an I am Batman somewhere, but I'm glad we didn't. It wouldn't have worked for their final scene. And also it would have been not too cheesy, but maybe slightly on the nose. I'm glad that they didn't do that for Lodgement. Now we get to talk about the villains, which is amazing. We'll kickstart with the Riddler, because he is the villain of the film. Paul Dano, never know how it's pronounced. By far the best actor to play weirdos that's ever been on screen. There will not be Blood. There'll be Bloods and Prisoners are the two that everyone goes to. I don't know if either of you two have seen any of those, but the day he
Looper
was
as
cast,
well.
yes, of course,
I love the character in Looper. Yeah,
another excellent Rian Johnson film. He hasn't had any clangers as far as I'm concerned. when they cast him as Riddler, because the Riddler's a really tricky role. I love Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey was like for the comedian. Jim Carrey is the '60s Riddler done in the '90s. You've got the ridiculous costume, the question marks, the weird jumping pizzazz sort of stuff, and it's Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey. It's exactly what you want. And to take the Riddler and say, how are we going to do him in? I'm going to be honest. I'm not familiar with the Riddler comics either of how he's been portrayed. The closest I've seen to Riddler is those bloody Arkham games, which, you know, the whole concept of the Riddler and those is that you're going to get Riddler trophies, challenges, all that kind of stuff. Paul Dano in this is, I'm not just going to say amazing. He's uncomfortable to be around. And I think when you can make a character uncomfortable, the writers worked, the directions worked, and the actors working. And it's this like perfect mirage of all three. So you get one wrong, something's going to be out of place and it's not going to work so well. But with the Riddler in this, you know, the fact the opening scene isn't Batman, so did you, Dave, earlier, you think the opening scene is going to be Bruce Wayne again because it's a little kid in a mansion. I think that's probably intentional. But obviously, Riddler's in that room the entire time on the repeat viewings. You see like the corner of his arm in there as well. And it's so well done. And yeah, we'll talk about Giacchino's score later. The creepy music he has as well. And I absolutely loved him. But where I'm going to go with this is maybe like one step too far of praise. When you have a character like the Riddler, I think he's a lot tougher to write than people think. You have to create a character that is essentially 3 steps ahead of Batman, right? Batman has to be following him, working on what's going on. This isn't just riddles on paper. You're going to make him a core villain for a 3-hour film. There's got to be other stuff involved. And then for the Riddler to work, you then need a writer that is also able to be 3 steps ahead. That he isn't trying to be too smart, but he's being smart enough that people aren't going to guess it like that. I mean, if you go back to the opening scene of the film, I would never for one moment thought the film's going to end with all the water panels being blown up at the sides and a flood into a square for them to kill everyone one by one. I thought it would just be, Riddler's going to, you know, he's going to kill a couple of people, scare some people and try and outsmart Batman. But this Riddler is not that. This Riddler is trying to wipe out the city and believes in Batman as an equal. And it's quite a terrifying prospect when you really, really delve into how he's portrayed. And I'm so glad that we've been able to get this take on him. I know it's not everyone likes the whole Zodiac costume, I'm going to add as well, but I have no issue. I think that's how it would work. And maybe this isn't even the last time we've seen the Riddler too.
I mean, if I could stand up right now and applaud for Paul Dano on this movie, I could. It'd just be a really weird shot of me. But I thought he was excellent. I love that it's weird being on a YouTube channel talking about him because obviously that turns out that's what he does. And it's that when he finds it out and he does the hi guys at the start of the thing, it's like, oh, that's so creepy. You have loads of YouTube channels that you've seen and you know exactly the type that's coming from. It's like, oh my word. And they're going through what he should wear and like talking about the outfit that he's got and where he bought stuff from and the comments at the side. It's just crazy. You've got to think with this Riddler character as well. At the end of the day, he does what he wanted to. He completed his mission. He defeats Batman. Really, Batman doesn't solve it before he goes through with his plan. It worked exactly the way the Riddler wanted it to. So he was starting a movie out where Batman, yes, being the great detective he is, and finds out the right information, but he does not find it out in time to stop what was going to happen. The Riddler wins outright at this, and I thought it was just amazing. And the reveal that when you think he's found out that he is Bruce Wayne and he actually doesn't know that it's the only character he didn't find with that where he's sitting.
I think he knows.
Well, when he's pinned and he smiles at the end, maybe, but I don't know. It was played really well. I just thought it was excellent. And apparently, I saw something online. One of the first scenes when Batman's coming out of the club, you can see him in the room that he's in, taking photos out of the window of the street outside the club where he's going to initially kill Falcone. Apparently, he's there taking photos in a shot. You can see him right, like 30 minutes in. You can probably see him, which is just something I'm going to have to go back and watch again now.
I was going to say that's going to justify a fourth viewing now.
Yeah, he's at the window apparently taking photographs of where where he wants him pulled into the light, and apparently you can see him plain as day. If you're looking for him, he's there in that room where they find him eventually. So it's kind of there for you all that time. So things are plotted in this movie for this Riddler character that you're right, it makes repeat viewing. There's bits and pieces. I just thought he was so well played. He was so creepy. That apartment scene where he's in the shadows, and then the guy who I can't remember the first guy he kills, but when he moves away,
The mayor.
and the candidate, and he's the TV light just catches him, and he's just stood in the room. Just pure Michael Myers, frightening horror in that moment as well. He was just brilliant. I absolutely loved him.
Yeah, like the first scene where you see him in the apartment and he's just standing there is terrifying, and that as the first time you're seeing him in the film works so well because, and especially with him, he's not the sort of like action. He's going to fight Batman hand to hand. He's using his mind. It's more of a mental game for him, and like he is steps ahead of Batman and the police. I thought it worked really well, even in the like little videos of him. He's so terrifying, and you're not even seeing him; you're just hearing his voice, and it's just it played it really well. And like when he gets caught by the police, and then he's in Arkham, and he's saying Bruce, like to begin with, I thought, oh no, he's worked it out, but then it turns out he hasn't worked it out, or he might have, but he's not aware. He's not aware that he's actually worked it out, if that makes sense. But yeah, like it works really well. He's terrifying as a character.
I think so. Where I'm kind of coming from, the first time I viewed it, I was like, "Oh shit, he knows who he is." It's like the whole Willem Dafoe thing, isn't it, from Goblin in the first one, and then in the second viewing, I was really curious because when you watch that scene, Batman keeps looking up at the CCTV camera, and I feel that moment is a game between them. That how I kind of view. Obviously, again, I've seen it loads, but I think the Riddler knows it's Bruce Wayne by country mile now. I think if he didn't already know, the funeral scene is where he knew when he saw him save that kid, and he's just watching from above, which is also you hear his breathe when they first go into that room. You hear his loud breathing as well over the top, which is really creepy. But I think he's wanting Batman to react to him being called Bruce so that they get him on the video of it. But he never does. And this is what I quite like with the Riddler. The Riddler is a character. I don't know if it's common that he's not always meant to have known who Batman is, but certainly like in the obviously Jim Carrey worked it out in that film a bit too easily, I'm going to be honest. But the concept that the Riddler's so smart, he knows Batman is, but he doesn't feel the need to share it with anyone. I like that concept. And if he does know, that's absolutely fine for them to work with. If he doesn't, that's also not a problem. But in this one, it's like scary. In his plan, it's so well orchestrated that, as a viewer, that something's happening with the mayor stuff. It isn't just about, getting a new leader and having someone less corrupt. The moment that cop at the apartment flashes up the election and they show the mayor's won, you're like, oh, something's going to happen with all this. Like, either she's corrupt or something's going to happen. And when you get the amazing interrogation scene of, when he's like screaming, like, no, this, I'm not even going to try and repeat it, but he basically says, this isn't how it's meant to go. That's going to be used immortally on like football tweets from, I think, most of the internet. But it's this thing where it's like, maybe I just gave you too much credit. And I love that is this, and it's meant to be, you already drill down, he's the victim. Obviously he's a murderer, but he is the victim of the renewal project. That he's a kid that could have had a future, maybe would have had a future, that had nothing from all this corruption. Obviously, it doesn't mean you go around killing and assassinating people, absolutely. But, when he speaks about putting on the mask, and that's how he can be the true of him, as you both said, the YouTube videos, a lot of memes around that he hit 500 subscribers. Listen, I don't want to be a nitty-picky person, but did a cop think to subscribe to his channel? Maybe it's not as simple as that. But that is something I kept thinking about. But when you get to the big reveal with the carpet tool, because the carpet tool is how he's killed the mayor as well, everything has been intrinsically placed for the carpet thing. And the fact Batman never works out, I think, is amazing. And when you do get it, just that synchronization of him shouting boom as every bomb goes off, because he knows he's safe at Arkham as well, doesn't he? And that's his whole goal. His goal is to get into Arkham, to watch the city get destroyed from the best viewpoint. And he kind of wins, as you both said. The bombs went off, and I think it was Mark Kermode said that the film at that point then becomes a disaster movie, not a big blockbuster. Let's put the villain in a metal suit, have them fight each other. It just becomes them surviving this. What's happening when we get to the end shot? We've got when the last nation Gotham is underwater. That's an amazing concept for them to explore. Not that the city's drowned, but the city's so fucked up from what happened. They're going to have to rebuild from scratch, and the sequel will maybe get some ideas there. But I absolutely loved the Riddler in this, and also the fact that he already knew Falcone was the villain. He knew he was innocent. It's all these kind of little things. But I don't know if anyone's got anything else to say. But I really want to talk about Colin Farrell's the Penguin. Anything else on the Riddler before I politely move on?
Just that the only thing I like as well is the goons that he had at the end of it. That he had these guys that were just going to turn up on what he was telling them, dressed exactly as he was. And like when he's asked who they are, like that guy takes off the mask at the end. He's just, "I am vengeance." He just uses the same line at Batman as Batman's been telling people. And I just thought it was so well done. I just thought they were excellent. I just thought it was a nice. That's the kind of person he would attract to help him in his cause. What he saw as his cause. I just thought that worked really well as that kind of person. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, he was so convincing and had this gravitas that he was pulling people towards him and like influencing their decisions and what they were going to do. And he wasn't out and about. He wasn't the one that was fighting Batman. He had people doing it for him. So he was just that was so well played.
And I think there's a bit of about stretching. There's a whole social commentary on the whole, not political rivals because these guys are accurate, but that whole like people with high influence on small platforms and the damage they can do with stuff like that. I think maybe this is a credit to the whole film, but the fact it's set in 2021, but it doesn't need to contextualize itself with his famous 2021 events. It's just a year that the film's set in. You've still got phones, but it's not so IT savvy that everything has to be about technology. I love that Gotham feels very like modern without being modern in that sense. Although just to pose the question, what film were they watching in the cinema when his parents died in 2001? A lot of heated discussions online about that. Some people think it could be Shrek 2. I think it could be. I think it could be Philosopher's Stone.
Coming out singing Smash Mouth and then suddenly getting gunned down would be just incredible.
But I also really quickly,
you're an all-star.
Do we think that was Joe Chill at the when he goes into the guy that says to him, "Don't I know you?" I think that's the person that killed Bruce Wayne's parents, but he is also the same guy that is the final goon as well. I'm just curious if maybe I'm stretching.
He's in the church as well. He's talking about, it's the one who talks about his daughter or something in the church and says to Bruce Wayne, you're right, that's him who's being pummeled there. So it all ties in. So I'm sure there's going to be an amazing commentary along the line somewhere. We're going to find out way more information that's been hidden throughout this film for us.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if it turns out to be him, then that's great. But if it turns out it isn't him, then it's not too bad. Like it's not like going to break the film or anything, but it'd be a nice little detail that Matt Reeves added in.
And I think as well, what this shows the Waynes is that you don't need to tell them who killed their parents. I think the one thing a lot of people didn't like from the first Batman is that Jack Nicholson killed them because he's not Joe Chill. Let's be blunt, not many people knew who Joe Chill was in 1989. And it's just really important. You don't need the origin. The fact that the mystery is unsolved is also quite cool for Batman's behalf. But talking about someone who I'm actually going to say is stolen this film is Colin Farrell as the Penguin. When he was cast, obviously everyone thought, what? And then there were those set photos of him in the fat suit. And I was like, I would say this isn't a joke. Like, I was like, they've got Colin Farrell in a fat suit. Like, I just couldn't ever see Colin Farrell doing that. And not that he's got an ego, is that I think some actors like to be above things like that. Sitting in like a makeup chair for X amount of hours every morning. And Colin Farrell's intriguing. But when we got those photos, and you got the official trailer stills as well, my word, I thought this is going to be interesting. Then there was talk of suddenly a Penguin TV series. I was like, right. I know Gotham kind of did a bit of a Penguin TV series, but obviously the whole Matt Reeves was going to get... they're talking about an Arkham spin-off now. There's going to be a Gotham Police Department Batman during year one. And all this HBO Max stuff, which maybe I don't know how much of it is going to come out in truth, but the Penguin one they saying is very close to filming. And after watching this film, I would quite honestly give them let them have as many shows as they want of Colin Farrell as the Penguin. He is amazing in this film, and it's not the fact that he's in this suit. You can still see Colin Farrell's eyes. You can still see him acting. And I'm going to make a comparison to Jared Leto in House of Gucci, because you watch House of Gucci, everyone's had the mispleasure of doing it. And that is Jared Leto putting on a suit with a Mario accent, and it's him being Jared Leto for as long as possible. But the whole gimmick is that he's in this suit, and it is horrible to watch. It's such a bad performance. And then here we are with Colin Farrell in the Batman, and I feel that he's given a really good performance with what, not just the accent, but we get to see him act when he's talking about, I ain't no rat. You get all that stuff, even when he's shouting at them when he says, I think he says, was it like, no habla español, fellas? Like, it's the way he delivers his lines. He's so good, and it's the fact it's Colin Farrell makes it better, because I think Colin Farrell's a really underrated actor in so many things, but in this, and I think he was on Hot Ones last week, and he said it's probably one of his favorite ever roles. Really eloquent. I do recommend anyone to watch it in truth. But he just said what he was able to. He said he was more surprised with the prosthetics that he could move his face and the face would move with him. But I can't help but love him. I'm so excited to see not only him in a show. Sorry, he's clearly going to be a big villain down the line for future Batman films. He's in the closing montage, and I'm really curious to see what he does, because this is a performance I maybe expected to be one of the not weaker points of the film. I didn't think this would be this big thing beforehand, but after watching it, I want to spend all day with him.
It's the disappearance of Colin Farrell into that makeup is incredible. What they can do now with a prosthetic head and fat suit, and basically, like you said, all you can see in that really are his eyes, maybe a little bit of his mouth in the makeup, but he disappears in that. And like you said, when he was on Hot Ones, I watched that as well, and he said he had that much freedom because it wasn't him anymore. It was a completely different person, and you feel that. And I just think, like you say, some actors would probably be above that. And I think Colin Farrell in his younger days, when he was that wild child in LA and heavy drinker and all of that culture, when he was, maybe probably wouldn't have, but he's come into his own in sort of the last 5-10 years. Colin Farrell is a different level of actor, and this, I think, is an exceptional performance. I think he puts everything into that, and it comes off as a big crime boss, and he probably has the little bit of humor that's in this movie comes from when he's been interrogated by Batman and Gordon. I just think he plays it so well, even when he waddles off at the end when his feet have been tied up. Just that little moment of him waddling was just so good. But no, I'd absolutely, if they're going to tie him into the Gotham series at the police thing where he's going to be in charge, but if it's going to be one, obviously he's not going to be quite there. But if the fact he was standing looking over the city at the end after everything's gone off, watching this new empire that he could now build, I think we've got to get him as a major character in the second movie, if not to whoever that was in the cell next to the Riddler at the end, who we all know who that is. He was exceptional, absolutely exceptional. He probably down. I thought the Falcone. I thought John Treadwell was probably above him for me. I thought John Treadwell was superb in this movie, which I've only mainly seen in comedic roles before this one. So this was such a step up in that. But yeah, I thought Colin Farrell was amazing.
Yeah, same. I mean, I remember when it got announced that Colin Farrell was going to be in the film, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. Like, I'd like to see him. And then it got revealed that he was going to be Penguin. I'm like, okay, that's weird. How is that going to work? Because Colin Farrell as a person isn't that sort of like Penguin sort of physique, because Penguin has a distinct physique. But then when you saw set photos and him in the trailer, it was like, okay, that works really well. And then seeing the film, it's like, yeah, that's spot on. Like, yeah, it's like you guys both mentioned with his eyes. Like, it's like the eyes never lie. If you really stare at him, you can tell that it's Colin Farrell. But if you didn't know it was Colin Farrell, it would just blow by you, because he plays it so well. But yeah, like at the end, he's in the montage, so I'd expect to see a lot more of him, because when they say martial law is in effect, and basically the death of what's his name, Falcone, has basically caused this power vacuum now. So there is other people. There's probably other people waiting in the wings, but the Penguin is going to ultimately be the one to sort of fill that void, because he was so close to Falcone.
Do you reckon, I'm really off topic, but do you reckon his TV series could be like a one season crime, not like, oh god, I don't want to compare it to Book of Boba Fett, but I'm going to drop a Book of Boba Fett spot over. Seen, Amy, you have seen, haven't you? You finished it, I think.
Yeah.
It ends with Boba Fett killing off the other crime lords and becoming like the head of a Godfather type thing. I wouldn't want that from a Penguin show, but if we're going to get more of the Gotham underworld via the Penguin, I'm really down for it. As long as we don't like get Batman in cheesy scenes, or we get like, here's Mr. Freeze, here's the Riddler, here's the whole city. As long as we can avoid that, I think the premise of a Penguin show is very interesting. I think it's a very hard sell though to make him the villain in the next film if he's going to get his own show where you're going to be on his side. But the testament is to Colin Farrell as well. He's willing to go back to being that character in a TV series. What was amazing is I watched it with my dad yesterday. He had no idea Colin Farrell's in the film. He'd seen a few trailers, but when we were walking out, he was just going through, he's like, I don't think I've seen Catwoman in anything, and he was just going through some of the cast. And I was like, oh, and Colin Farrell's the Penguin. He was like, what? He's like, the guy from In Bruges. I was like, yeah. He's like, he's the Penguin. I was like, yeah. He didn't believe me. And I think that's, again, the testament to what they did with this. And it's just amazing. And you're right, the power vacuum is going to create. And going back to sort of Batman Begins, and I think that's something that really worked heading into the Dark Knight, is that Falcone got took out in Batman Begins. Yes, it was very early days, but then all the crime families were at each other for the events of the Dark Knight to happen. And with the whole concept this time, we have Gotham underwater, martial laws in effect. Falcone, who's basically ran the city for years, is dead. There's going to be a lot of differing forces trying to come together to take control. We know Maroni's already in jail, which is, I don't think we'll ever need to see him. But I love the fact that it's going to open up now for some traditional villains to come in. We'll speak maybe about some sequel stuff, because I've got a character I think we're gonna meet in that next one as well. But Colin Farrell, I do love him. Let's talk Falcone though, because the Penguin is deemed as the right hand man. I know that they said Falcone runs the city, Penguin's his right hand man. We know he'd probably get bumped off at some point. I didn't expect him to be as integral to the film as he was. I've only really seen him in the Big Lebowski and the Transformer films, and I love the Transformers films more than Big Lebowski, which I'm probably in a minority on. But he's got this really weird presence in this film, right? Where like because I've seen him in obviously those films, like it's hard to take him seriously as a crime boss. But he does a very good crime boss level, and with John Turturro, it's amazing because he actually reminded of Adam Sandler in this film, and that's not a criticism of him. I love Adam Sandler, but it was that like really slow, heavy breathing New York accent. But I love the idea that he's like, when you first meet him in his room when Bruce goes in, they're playing the music from The Godfather, which I think is an incredible Easter egg. When I first heard that, I was completely off my head buzzing. It's just one song from the soundtrack, but the fact they were playing a Godfather song, and this is him, as he's still the crime lord, and by the time they revisit, I think it's Sim that clocked the song. It's by, or is it the Rat Pack or something? At that point, we know that he's the Rat. So there's even some really smart stuff going on with the score in this. But I just love the whole concept as well, and that he is the one that, when they think he's the Rat, and it turns out, in fact, that no, we all work for him. He is the city. That is just an amazing moment, and it's not slaps you around the head saying this is how it's going to go. He's shady. He's a villain, but you don't expect him to be that much a villain. I'd actually give praise to the marketing team. Falcone was basically no marketing except a casting list, and I think that was able to make you naturally think Riddler's the main guy and Penguin's going to be the big one after, but actually it was Falcone rather than the Penguin. The Penguin's been set up perfectly for whatever comes down the line, and I just. Again, the criminal underworld stuff is something that the films have really struggled to do, understandably so. But when you get a 3-hour runtime, you can do some of that underworld stuff.
he just played the part so well of this guy who's been running, like you say, he's running, not just running this underworld, not just running this club. He's what they say, he's been the mayor, basically been the mayor for 20 years, running the whole of everything, everybody in his pocket. He was in charge of everything, and he played it with such a plan where he was just like not terrifying. Didn't play it as like this big gangster. Like he's just playing pool with the boys in some shots, and he's there and he's very greeting and opening with everybody. And I just think it just plays amazing. Like even when he has the meeting with Bruce Wayne, he starts to tell him hints about his dad and things like that. It never feels like he's a threatening guy who's going to just kill him for some reason. He's going to give him a bit of information that's maybe going to lead Bruce off on a path that he's never going to come see Falcone again, and it's going to crush him because of what he thought. And he seems to have all this information about everybody that he can use to keep himself in that position of power, and he played it so well. It was beautifully portrayed. As I say, he was right up there for me in the cast.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know Falcone was going to be in the film, and then when they revealed him, I was like, oh, he's been in the Transformers film. I was like, okay, how's this going to go? Because yeah, I've only seen him in the Transformers film, and in that film, he plays a comedic character. It's like a bit of a nut job, weirdo. Whereas in this, Falcone is so serious and he's a lot more in depth, and sort of, yeah, when it was revealed that he's been running the city for 20 years and just being in control of everything is just so surprising, and it's so well done because it doesn't like tell you outright, it builds it up, and it's like step by step, like, oh, okay, he's got, like when Bruce has a Catwoman going through the club, and it's like, oh, this guy works for this Gotham Police Department. This guy's the DEA. It's like, oh, okay, so Falcone obviously has these guys in his pocket, but then it's revealed that he's been running everything for 20 years. It's like, it's really surprising. It's really well done. But yeah, like it makes sense that he's been running the city for 20 years, especially because I think it's mentioned in the film, he hardly ever leaves the Iceberg Lounge. Like that's his fortress basically, and nobody can go in and just see him one-to-one because that is his place basically.
And it's a great parallel when he meets Bruce and you get the story of, I got shot in the chest. Your dad, apologize, I'm looking at barking. We've got some new neighbors and their dogs don't stop barking. It's really interesting seeing that dynamic with them all. And I think that's where the kind of crux of the film lies, is that if that doesn't work, if the Falcone stuff doesn't work, that big, not even big twist, but the crime syndicate doesn't work, the Penguin stuff won't work, the Riddler stuff won't work, and then you've got the Catwoman dilemma, which her dad has essentially killed her best friend. And what I loved with their whole relationship is that it's almost like a tree. You had the Wayne parents there, you've got Falcone there, an alliance of some kind. Obviously, we know the truth now that it was more of an in debt more than anything, and Falcone looking for power. There's the fact that Bruce is the son of the people that he killed, and he's sort of fallen for the daughter of the Crown Lord. But ultimately, he dies anyway, and the daughter wants. There's those parallels between Bruce and Selina, which I really enjoy. In theory, if they were to be together, the Falcone and Wayne lineage would unite. Maybe something I'll explore another time, but yeah, just his stuff's amazing. What I really want to speak about, because that's going to wrap it. We've covered so much of the film with the characters, and that's how I want to sort of do it today, because this is all about the characters in absolute truth for me. I want to talk about some of the other things. The big one's the soundtrack from Michael Giacchino. It was really amazing. I was going through some old programs the other day, and I took the Michael Giacchino. It was in 2018 or 19. I can't remember what year now. But Matt Reeves came out on stage, and he was doing pre-production on the Batman. Everyone assumed Giacchino would do the score, but he got down on one knee and asked him to do the Batman soundtrack for him. And I just remember being there for that, and I retweeted the photo last night because I just completely forgot about that. And that was an amazing moment, because obviously he did the Apes films with him, but when Michael Giacchino came onto this, he's one of my favorite composers, so maybe I'm a little bit biased. I thought we'd get a good score. I didn't think we would get this good a score. The Batman theme itself is so simple. It's a couple of notes on a piano and organ being done at different speeds and all that kind of stuff. But the actual soundtrack suited the design of Gotham the take of Batman, the other characters. The Riddler's got an amazing creepy theme. Catwoman's got a very femme fatale noir theme as well, I'd argue. Everyone's got these perfect moments, but the soundtrack within is absolutely perfect. It's never blaring. It's never too much. It is always what you'd expect and need from a film. And it's such a simple thing to say, but how many blockbusters do we watch where the soundtrack gets too much? It gets, I don't want to say too loud, because sometimes it does work. Sorry, for a film like Tenet, a loud soundtrack suits that. But there is something about this score where everything clicks. And I think it's because he can balance perfectly the use of the Batman theme and Batman against, having the Riddler appear or mixing of two characters. He's able to renovate the score with them. I think the soundtrack was absolutely superb. And I really can't wait to see whatever characters do come out and what he wants to do with them.
I mean, Michael Giacchino is probably the next John Williams in waiting. I think he's getting more and more work. He's been kind of lifted up now to where he's getting so many more movies. He's going to be working with. He's going to work with Spielberg as well on one of his films later on this year. He's getting these big franchises. He's done a Star Wars movie. He's becoming this really he's done the Nolan stuff he's saying. So I mean, he's building up to be this. He's going to be. I think he's going to be. He probably is already, but he's going to be the next big thing in film composing, in my opinion. I think the Batman score is exceptional. I think some of the themes that he goes through, he plays with simplicity a lot, and I really like that about his work. It's never too many notes for the sake of making too many notes. I mean, the Riddler's theme has real slow tinges of the Ave Maria that is sung by the choir, and it's got that sort of through it, which is just an amazing little callback. It's slowed down. You can't really tell what it is, but once you've heard it, it's that song played through there, which is it's that Riddler's come through this and he's had that song with him all that time, and it plays throughout the film. And I just thought it's just a wonderful piece. I'm looking forward. I think it's going to be one to get on vinyl and to be able to sit and just play out. I think would be an absolutely wonderful thing to have. I just think it's his scores are becoming above, but they never overshadow what you're seeing on screen. They always complement as well. So I think it's an amazing piece of music.
Yeah. So, I mean, myself personally, I don't always sort of try and pay attention to the soundtrack. I always notice them when it's really well done. So in the past, the June soundtrack, I thought that was great. But it's those sort of soundtracks that really gets my attention, and this did. I mean, even in the trailer, the soundtrack in the trailer, and throughout the whole film, yeah, it's like you said, it complements the scenes. It's not overbearing. It's not sort of playing over it so you can't understand what's going on. It's sort of in the background and it's very subtle, but it does complement each scene. And I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, and I just got a quick combo sound from the earlier part. Do you find the things I've hit at the Imperial March? I have seen this a lot. Maybe because I know Star Wars so well, I've never ever considered it flagging. But if you drilled it down and played it differently, it probably would sound quite similar. Because the Imperial March is a very basic theme in essence. It's a couple of notes on loop. And Dave, you mentioned John Williams. I mean, Giacchino is the next John Williams. He's took over so many of his franchises, which is amazing as well. But just to go over his recent work, he did Homecoming in No Way Home in December, this in March. He's doing Jurassic World, which comes out in June. He's doing Thor that comes out in July, and he's doing Lightyear that comes out, I think, in June or July. That's 5-6 scores in the space of 7 months. That's inhuman. And even when he got Rogue One, and I've got that song, I'm looking above my desk, he had 6 weeks to do that score. And listen, you can't compare anyone's John Williams when it comes to Star Wars. But at least with Giacchino's score, you could put it on par. And I think that's the best compliment you can have. On par is the best Star Wars film. I didn't mind the solo score, but it wasn't up there. But Giacchino, he had 6 weeks and he made one of the missing. I mean, there's not a bad Star Wars soundtrack in truth, but yeah, he is an absolute unit. And I think he said he wrote the theme before he'd even got it confirmed. He knew what it was, and I don't know if anyone remembers the first video of the costume test. it was like a red room with Robert Pattinson, and they're playing Michael Giacchino done like a 40-second Batman theme for it. It's those kind of things that you can tell like he's really excited to be working on this. And when you see Giacchino in interviews, he works with so many Disney films as well. He's got fantastic relationships with directors and studios, and there's a reason they all come back to him. I just think he's an absolute unit, and this score is just, when Batman enters the rafters, when he jumps, he carpet bombs the glass out, and he comes on. That's like the kick. And I bet in America they're probably cheering in their screenings like that's Batman, and the theme kicks in, and without sort of dissing on the older films, like whenever I listen to the Michael Keaton Batman theme, not Michael Keaton, Tim Burton, sorry, Danny Elfman, it always feels like that theme is not above the character. But that theme ended up being used for so many Batman mediums since it became bigger than that take on the character. As I feel with this feels like this is Matt Reeves' Batman theme versus this is a Batman theme that's going to carry over for decades and for some reason also be in the Justice League, which doesn't make any sense at all. But yeah, soundtrack superb. And what I kind of want to go on at, so we've covered most things. We're going to talk in a couple of moments about favorite scenes and one from sequel. I'm actually going to bring up something we've not spoke about. Barry Keoghan playing Arkham inmate, aka the Joker. What do we all think of? We had a scene, we didn't even see his face. So, what do you think of the Joker being kind of? I guess we have to officially say hinted at, but we all know who it is. What do we think?
I think it was a nice take that you didn't see a lot. You could see there's some prosthetics on his face. You could see there was more damage to his face. From what I've just been reading stuff online before, obviously coming on tonight, and there's apparently a scene that's going to be on the deleted scenes that Batman goes to see him at some point, to like a Hannibal Lecter sort of, I need some information. So that's going to be really interesting to see what scene they had between each other, to see how much we see, if it was still sort of shot in darkness, so you don't really see who he's talking to. But I think it was a really nice hint, but it felt at that point like we didn't need it. I think it would have been enough to hear what he was saying about clowns and things like that, just to hint at the. I don't think we need to say any more on that. It felt a bit, the way they did it there felt a bit pushing. I would have preferred, we'll see when it comes out on the deleted scenes, I think I would have preferred the scene with Batman going to get information about what was going on with that character, but it worked all right. It's obviously hinting at what's coming, and how do you get through Batman without having the Joker turn up? I think it's just one of those things that you have Batman, eventually you have to have the Joker. It's his biggest enemy. I like they didn't start with him. They never seem to now. I say, obviously Batman Begins had the Joker card at the end of it as well, so it was hinted at there that we're going to get him. And then we've got obviously the portrayal of the Joker that we all now see as the ultimate Joker portrayal. So there's a lot to be lived up to if that's the route they go down. I think it's tough for any actor to come into a role, but I mean, he was pretty good in Eternals. That's all I've really seen him in. So I don't know what it'll be like, but hey, power to him. If they're going to go down Joker story, he's going to have to be on his A game to be the Joker we all need to see in this Matt Reeves world of Batman.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting them to include the Joker. Going into it, I was like, oh, okay, it's just going to be the Riddler and it's going to be Penguin, and that's about it. But then when I had that last scene with the Riddler talking to an inmate, let's say, and then it's revealed that it's Joker, it's like, oh yeah, they think we're all clowns and stuff like that. I think it was really well done. I mean, I didn't know it was Barry Keoghan to begin with, and then I was like, okay, who's that? I can put names. I don't really put names to faces really well. But then I realized it was him. I was like, okay, that would be interesting. Because he was good in Eternals, for as bad as a film that was. But yeah, I mean, he will stand out in Eternals, so I think he'll do really well. But yeah, you can't have Batman and not have the Joker. They're basically synonymous at this point. But yeah, he has got a lot to live up to compared to. I mean, you got to compare. I think every time we get a portrayal of the Joker now, it's going to be compared to Heath Ledger, which should be because that was an outstanding performance. I mean, he did it so well. And then we had Jared Leto, so it can't get any worse, to be fair. So there's that. Yeah, I wasn't expecting him to be in there, but I think that it's really well. I think it's good that they've added him, just as that little. It's not an Easter egg because it's out and out there, but it is nice to have the Joker be a character in the universe.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, so to say there's a convention in America that Barry Keoghan's at, and apparently he's signing anything official from the Batman, but he isn't signing anyone's Joker prints or Joker comics, apparently, which is amazing because he's really playing up that he's Arkham inmate. But it's kind of not annoying for me. So the problem I have is this isn't with the film. This is actually me. This because of COVID, right? This film's been in production for like 5 years. They're saying, right? And I want to say casting started in like 2019, maybe late 19. I'd seen Barry Keoghan in Dunkirk and a couple of other things that he was starting to emerge. I don't know if he'd been cast in Eternals at this point. He might have, but I remember seeing him getting formally cast in Batman, and they made the trailblazing mistake of he is playing a police officer. You know how like Joseph Gordon-Levitt was Detective Blake or like a fictional name? They just said that Barry Keoghan was an unnamed GCPD officer. Obviously, because he wasn't a big name, I was like, okay, that's fine. You know, maybe he's Robin, maybe it's a small role, I don't know. And obviously, over the course, lockdown, COVID, everything, his career's got bigger and bigger. Some of the films he shot have started coming out. Obviously, Eternals, Marvel, not household name, but big production for people to notice him in. And he did that amazing interview with I forgot which American TV host, but he spoke about like his troubles growing up, what he'd been through when he was younger, and he started to get a lot of media attention again. And I think he's a tremendous actor. I think he even got BAFTA Rising Star nomination, I think. And then while this is happening, everyone sees GCPD officer, the Batman 2022 in his Wikipedia page. And then people start to say, wow, look at that jawline. That looks a bit like a certain Joker. Oh, he's an unnamed cop. Is he? And the Barry Keoghan Joker rumors came around far too long. And then I want to say like 5 months ago, there's rumors that they tested 2 screenings of the film with the audiences. One had a scene in with, quote, a character. The other one didn't. And everyone knew it was the Joker. And then they took GCPD officer off his wiki and just didn't have anything. So I spent the entire film expecting Barry Keoghan to turn up at some point as the Joker. I thought it was going to be the guy that they unmask on the Raptor, because it's like a big reveal for this thing, and I'm glad it wasn't him. But the Joker stuff I find really interesting because without sort of getting too much in the sequel, I really don't want him to be the big bad for the second Batman film. The fact he's like recruiting the Riddler as a friend, maybe this is like the Twilight of me. I'd love to see an Arkham Asylum type film. But that be this like build up. You've had all these Batman characters that we've seen already on the TV and the films, and the Joker's going to cap it all off on maybe a 3rd or a 4th film. I'd love them just to not do a Dark Knight, because if they come out tomorrow and say that the Joker's the main villain in the second Batman film, everyone's going to go to the Dark Knight, and I don't think it's fair on the production. So maybe hold off the end of a trilogy, build up to it. It seems like they're building, and that's where kind of I like. So I don't mind the scene. It's more the context of what's going to come next. But I'm glad we didn't see his full face because, like Thanos in the first Avengers film, he wasn't ready then. They had to like redevelop him over however many years, and it makes that look a bit stupid now. So I think they did the right thing, holding off the full. Obviously, we get a bit of the hair and a bit of the side of the mouth. And I'm curious to see have they shot anything with him in full lighting, full costume. Because as you said, Dave, I read about that deleted scene, which is very interesting. I'm glad they cut it. I think if the Joker would have rocked it halfway through this film, it'd be a bit too much, maybe. Like, here's a brand new take on Batman. By the way, here's the Joker 1.5 hours in. I don't think that'd confuse a lot of people. So I'm very intrigued to see what comes next with him. And I think this is going to be a big talking point for the future of these films. He's already in Arkham. We know they've met because he was going to meet him in prison. But what history is there? Is he going to break out? Is he going to lure Batman into Arkham with all his other villains already there? There's some really interesting stuff ahead for Batman. That little tangent aside, I want to ask everyone, as always, favourite scenes. This film is, to me, almost a perfect film. But my favourite scene is really boring. It is the opening Batman scene, the montage, the Halloween party stuff. I loved that entire not series, that entire moment. Sorry, I just read a comment we'll bring up. I I read that entire scene. The moment Batman speaks, the Giacchino score kicks in, and we just get this montage of all the criminals in Gotham just stealing. But there's that line of the "I can't be everywhere at once," and then you just get the pumpkin head looking up at the black alley, and then you get the other people. They just look and see the darkness. I think if you're ever going to take a scene and describe what is the character of Batman, you can honestly take that 5 minutes, truck it to an alien, and they'll figure out what he's about just off that. So that's my favorite scene for this film.
I don't know. Are you bringing up a comment to say before I was going to?
Yes. We've got a comment from Sim. Arkham spin-off series confirmed. Yes. Very intrigued to see how they do a spin-off into Arkham. Will there already be existing patients? I think the problem with Warner Brothers is they like to jump ahead of themselves. I'm pretty sure The Flash was meant to come out in 2018 on their old schedules.
Yeah, I mean, I've got favorite scene. Can I just before I do, can I just tell what our worst scene is? The one I'd really disliked. It's only one. Do that drive through the cemetery at the end where you could have had Dom and what's his name? And the other one from Fast and the Furious driving off together and going different ways to that song. That's what it felt like. If that song had started playing, it would have been like, bravo. That was my least favorite thing in the movie. But I did like those two scenes. I really loved that we got another hallway scene. Like we got it's the cinematographer who did Rogue One, and we got a hallway scene where Batman's coming down, deflecting fire and bullets at him, kicking ass of everybody who's in the way of him. I just thought, you just literally a hallway scene. But I think, you know what my favorite scene was probably Alfred and Bruce in the hospital in the ward. I thought that was just this perfect moment between two characters, and that's for me. For everything else that the movie is great, that was my favorite acted part in it.
Yeah, I think my favorite scene is the hallway scene. Either that or towards the end when he's saving all those people from the stadium, and he's like leading the people with the flare. I mean, like a little bit before that, they're very wary of him, and I think throughout the whole film, he's this weirdo character that's not to be trusted. But then at the end of the film, he's sort of evolved into someone that can be trusted. I mean, even when he's trying to get those people out from under the whatever it is, the railing and stuff, they are very like wary of him. But then it's to the point where he's leading them out and leading them to safety just from the flare, and he's got all those people behind him. So see, that was my favorite scene, and that and the hallway scene, action wise, is just so good.
I think the hallway scene, I want to be like, Rob Pattinson said they shot that in pitch black. That it wasn't him, it was stunt. Apparently that scene was shot full. The problem with Rob Pattinson is he says he lies in interviews, so I don't want to look like a mug if this gets proven wrong, but the way the lighting is done in that scene, I genuinely also believe that could have been shot in pitch black, because it's that simple moment. I think Dark Knight Rises is something similar, and I always laugh at that because it has Christian Bale like running at the camera like directly onwards, and it's like the flashing blue, but just the machine, and again the music kicking in, like every time Batman would punch, you'd get a sound effect with that hallway sequence. But yeah, the Greg Fraser on cinematography. I mean, he did Dune, he's done Rogue One. I think he's probably the best cinematographer for big budget blockbusters. I think sometimes cinematographers can be really up themselves and don't want to associate themselves with that kind of thing. But he Gotham is as important to this film through his creation, his camera work. Comment by Sim as well saying the car chase was up there. Absolutely. Not the first time Sim Batman drive up a what are they called? You know, when the things drop down and it's got the cars on it. I know we saw that in the Dark Knight Rises as well, but just going through the fire. And like it's the whole Colin Farrell stuff when he's like laughing, he's screaming, "I got you." We've seen it in the trailers. Yeah. We don't care. It worked so well, and it's just in the air. He makes this amazing noise of when the penguin's in midair. We can just hear Colin Farrell making these weird noises like he's spinning around, and it just keeps making me laugh on the rewatches. But yeah, there's an abundance of great scenes. It's amazing, and anyone who's keep commenting anymore because I think David probably the weak scene probably is the final scene, and it's like cheesy. Like they've done such a great job with the whole romance situation, and then it's like really cheesy. Our paths will meet again. cross direction.
Come a long way, and it's absolutely. I'm going to literally edit. I want to see an edit with that played over it.
So someone would. It's coming on HBO Max in 5 weeks, I think they said. So it won't be too long to wait. What I want to do really quickly as well, before we talk about what we're going to do from the sequel, I just want to quickly go to the box office. It's made $248 million its opening weekend worldwide, 125 million America. Very good numbers COVID-wise. Second biggest opening post-pandemic, which is essentially all box office records are now going to be rewritten to post-pandemic because cinemas are never going to go back to what they were. This film's online in 6 weeks' time. That it was always a 90-day rule, not a 42-day rule. Everything's going to change in regards to box office figures, but solid opening. It's a 15 over here in the UK as well. Some territories it's not going to get released in, rightfully so, with one big one in particular. China's release date is the 18th of March, which is very interesting to see how they take to it. But numbers look good, which is the most important, not most important thing, but that's going to be the quickest thing that gets the official sequel announcement probably tomorrow afternoon. What I kind of want to ask each of you, what does everyone want to see from a sequel? And that sounds really dumb, but there are certain characters, there are opportunities, as you said, martial laws in place. It's like a clean reset. That's how the ending felt like. It felt like a clean reset for Gotham City, that by the time the sequel comes, everything would have changed. Aside from the really boring, obvious thing, like, Gordon will be a commissioner at it. This is where I'm kind of torn. I really want to see Harvey Dent because the DA is dead in this film. He got blown up. The perfect time to introduce Harvey Dent. However, I'm also very cautious that if you introduce Harvey Dent in a second film, you'd have to go back to the Dark Knight. And then everyone knows, wow, if they're not going to make him Two-Face in this film, they'll do it at the end of the film, ready for the next one. So I think we're going to get Harvey Dent. I would love to see Harvey Dent, but I'm really concerned at how we would see him. I'd love him maybe introduced in like the Penguin series or something, but the big thing for me from a sequel is that we need Harvey Dent, but I want to see this new Gotham. I want to see which criminals have risen out from it. I just want to ask, so if any characters, any villains you'd love to see. I'm really curious because it feels like there's a blank slate. And I've got one more I'll say, but I'm not going to say it in case any of you guys do.
I think it's a really tough one because of the world they've built and the way they're doing it. It's a lot of the Batman villains are sort of very out there, and the way they act or the way they are costumed, like it's really tough to think they might put a Mr. Freeze in there. I've just seen it come. It comes. I was literally about to say the Night of Owls. I think is something that could be really, really interesting. Tim just put in the comments. I think it's somewhere they could really go because it's not overly where you've got to put them. I mean, literally, it's a mask in the shape of an owl face, and I think that could be something that's a really interesting take on a group who would also want to power play for the new Gotham. So I think that would be a really interesting way to go. But yeah, Hush, it could be where they're going to pull from for the next story.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it to you, George, and Sim as we were walking out. As that looks like it's so set up for Hush.
Yeah.
The universe they've built is really dark, really gothic, which plays really well into the sort of Hush storyline, stuff like that. I mean, how bad WB are with doing their live action films, I do really enjoy the animated films and the animated Hush film. If you haven't watched it, I'd really recommend it because that is so good. But if they can do something similar to that in a real life version, like in this Batman universe, that'd be I think Hush is sort of the next villain, or it has to be. I think George, you sent me a video with them basically announcing, confirming Hush, basically.
So with you, when the film finishes, Dave, did you stay for the credit scene?
No.
Okay, amazing. So I was told it ends with a riddle, right? So we didn't stay for the press screening, but we did in the IMAX. And it's funny because everyone stayed. And it's just like a green text. Basically, are you still here? But then it goes like boom. And apparently, if you freeze frame it, it comes up with a website, El Ladder from the thing. You go on the website and you enter. You get 3 riddles, and if you enter all 3, you get given a 20-second video, and it's about the Thomas Wayne speech, and then it speaks about the journalist that's killed, and then Hush comes up in letters like the newspaper front, because that's in the film as well.
Oh.
But you can hear someone whispering. Does he say Elliot? Basically, the name of the character that is Hush is whispered to like a dying breath. So everyone's taking that as confirmation we're going to get Hush, which I think it's a very tricky storyline to do in live action. I think Rob Pattinson would be up for. I'm not going to say the context of it for those that don't know, but I'd say if you wanted to read into a comic book, Hush is probably the safest bet for a sequel. Court of Owls, Rob Pattinson's spoken loads about. He really wants to do Court of Owls. Again, Penguin, how big is he going to get? Is he going to be the Don? Are we going to see the Joker? Are we going to get Harvey Dent? I think Matt Reeves said loves to do Mr. Freeze one day. It's kind of amazing because I think in modern day, we're so used to the concept of a trilogy. I feel like everything's locking up into 3 films. But Rob Pattinson went to theaters in LA and was saying, let's get the sequel done, let's get the sequel done. And I'm kind of sat here without doing the whole Marvel formula. If you've got a director and a lead actor who are willing to sign multiple, and this is maybe a criticism as well, because I get annoyed with Marvel. If Rob Pattinson based it, I'd be up for doing like 3 or 4 Batman films. I'd love to get a number out in the know so they can build to it. Whereas if we had this not an interesting thing, like if we never know how many films they're committed to, it makes it harder to plan ahead. But I'm loving the concept that we as an audience might not get a Justice League universe, not DC nonsense. We're literally getting a Batman universe like the animated the animated series, but also like the 60s show, right? All those villains were around with each other. They'd tag along with each other. They'd join up. They'd fight each other. And I think it'd be really exciting to see their take on it, as long as we don't. I don't mind the odd TV show, as long as we're not getting like 4 TV series on top of films that you must show everyone. But I think it's really exciting as a Batman fan where the sequel could go. But I do think I think Hush is like 90% certain. But you know, we've seen Falcone, Penguin, and Riddler in this, all 3 together. Why not push towards 2 or 3 other villains that he showed that he can manage each of them well? They're not overwritten. There's not too much. They're not underdeveloped. I'm really curious to see what Matt Reeves wants to do. But also, given how I felt this film, I'm happy for them just to give him the keys. And like Christopher Nolan for The Dark Knight, write whatever you want to write, as long as Warner Brothers finances it. I believe Matt Reeves has a clause where they can't intervene in creatives. He made sure they had that for the first film. I think Nolan had something similar for Dark Knight onwards. I would love just let him make what he wants. And that's a really dumb answer, but that's my answer. Anyone else for the sequels, or does that round us out for tonight? So,
it's just a comment from Sim that the problem with Hush is it would be very similar to the way Riddler worked, and he wanted to bring down the city and stuff like that. I think it can work. It just depends on how they play it.
I think if they did it for the Bruce Wayne side of things, I think that would really help the Bruce Wayne end of it all. But yeah, I'd love to see how they do the whole like masked bandage in live action, or the costume stuff. That being said, really quick final thoughts from everyone. To me, this is one of my favorite blockbusters I've seen. I've said that in a long time. I love No Time to Die and Dune and Spider-Man. But in terms of a Batman film, this is right up there. I keep saying the definitive take on Batman. I still stand by those words. I think this will be it's fairer to compare this to Batman Begins and Batman 89 more than anything, because this is going to set up a new world, set up new characters, new environments, and it absolutely smashed it out of the park and has left the doors open for whatever comes down the line. So my final thoughts from this is absolutely superb. This is easily my film of the year so far. Not that it's hard comparison at the moment, but I'd be very surprised come December if anything else has managed to crop up. I just thought it was superb, and I can't wait to see what's next.
I love this film. I came out overjoyed with what I'd seen. I think that Rob Pattinson smashed every expectation I had of him and felt like a new take on Batman, but a one I'm really interested in seeing how they go forward with it. And yeah, I'm more than happy to see more films with this, and long may it continue. I thought this was a brilliant film.
Yeah, same. Yeah, definitely my film of the year so far. I mean, the only thing off the top of my head, there's nothing that might come close. I mean, Doctor Strange 2, but that's more because it's going to open up so much stuff on the Marvel side. But yeah, So far, film of the year, no question, no doubt.
Absolutely. And we want to hear from you. So everyone that's been commenting along tonight on the live chat, on the live stream, thank you so much. And please do keep them coming. If you're not watching it live, if you're watching it afterwards, comment whatever you want. We do reply to comments on the channel. We'll bring those up. It's going to be really exciting to see what you think of it. And please do hit that like and subscribe. We've got a lot more videos on the way. As I said, there is another Batman kind of film out late this year. And it's not been formally announced yet, but I don't mind saying it now. There will be a big Batman rankings video in the build up to Flash. Yes, that's in October and November time. But this film is out now. There are now, I think, 12 live action Batman films, or not live action, theatrical release films, including Lego Batman Phantasm, similar to the Bond ranking, similar to, I almost gave away an upcoming one, similar to the Marvel one. And there will be one around the time of May the 4th. I'm just going to leave that there. There's going to be a massive Batman ranking video. You'll get a lot of people that have jumped on these videos over the last month with us, some new faces, and there might be some build-up of some other Batman films. So if you're a fan of Batman, if you're a fan of DC, Ayman, it's your second video on the channel. You jumped on the Peacemaker review with us, which I really enjoyed doing. DC isn't going away, not as away as Marvel. See, Marvel comes back every few weeks, but DC, things are slowly, hopefully, forming. And whether it's by fluke or coincidence, we'll find out one day. But as I said, do hit the subscribe button. We've got a lot more exciting stuff to show you on the way this year. And if you are new to the channel, obviously the best way to find out about our recording videos is always getting us on social media. So that's Twitter @cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. We've got links to TeePublic in that description below. We've got a link to Dave's channel as well, which I need to insert in straight away because I forgot to last time. And I said it's a film channel. There's Oscar stuff. Oscar season is always a big one. 3 weeks from tonight is the big night, the live stream, the annual live stream. Me and Tate will be live as always, going through our predictions. And we've still got a few more reviews on the way. So the Lost Doors review is coming out this Tuesday, the 8th of March. We're a little bit behind, thanks to Netflix and Drive to Survive. But obviously a lot of people did check that video out. Very controversial and just basically contained a 10-minute rant on certain people. Quick comment by Sim. Best depiction of Batman big screen. Batman is DC's redemption at the moment. Very interesting. So once more, thank you all for coming on. Be sure to join us on the next one, and we'll see you then. Take care.
Yeah.